the human who tamed the beast and shattered an empire. They said she was nothing, a fragile human serving monsters who could tear her apart with a single claw. But when the alpha heir, a child twisted by rage and fear, lunged for her throat in front of the entire court, Elena Voss didn't scream. She didn't run. She looked into his wild eyes and saw what no predator could. A terrified boy drowning in power he couldn't control. What happened next would ignite a war, expose ancient secrets, and force a ruthless king to choose between his throne and the one person who could destroy it all. Stay until the end to see how one quiet moment of compassion becomes a revolution. Like and comment with your city if you're watching. The obsidian hall smelled like blood and ambition. Elena Voss kept her eyes down as she moved through the crowd. Her silver tray balanced perfectly, despite the tremor in her hands. Around her, the elite of the Drax Empire gathered in their finest. Silk and leather, gold and steel, all of it draped over bodies that could shift from human to beast in a heartbeat. Shapeshifters, predators, alphas. And Elena? She was prey. "More wine!" a woman's voice snapped from her left. Elena turned smoothly, bowing her head as she refilled the crystal glass. The woman, Lady Seren, if Elena remembered correctly, didn't even glance at her. None of them did. To them, humans were furniture, useful, breakable, replaceable. Elena had learned to be invisible. It was the only way to survive. The hall itself was a monument to power. Black marble columns stretched 3 stories high, carved with scenes of ancient hunts, wolves tearing into elk, bears crushing skulls, eagles ripping flesh from bone. Chandeliers made from antlers and iron hung overhead, casting sharp shadows across the assembly. At the far end, on a raised dais of obsidian and steel, sat the throne. And on that throne sat King Ronan Drax. Elena had seen him only once before, from a distance. Up close, even from across the hall, he was overwhelming. Massive shoulders, a jawline that could have been carved from stone, eyes the color of molten gold that seemed to pierce through everything they touched. His hair was black as midnight, pulled back in a style that revealed the brutal angles of his face. He wore simple clothing, a black tunic, leather bracers, but he didn't need finery. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. He was speaking with his council, his voice too low for Elena to hear, but she could see the tension in the room. Everyone felt it. Something was wrong tonight. The gathering was supposed to be a celebration, the heir's presentation, where the young alpha pup would be formally introduced to the court. But the celebration felt more like a funeral. Elena wove through the crowd, refilling glasses, removing empty plates, keeping her breathing steady. She'd been working these events for 3 years now, ever since the Empire had recruited her from a border village that no longer existed. She'd learned the rules quickly. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't look them in the eye. Don't react, no matter what you see. Don't run. Running triggered the hunt, and humans never survived the hunt. "Where's the brat?" someone muttered nearby. Elena's ears caught it. A tall man with gray streaking his temples, his eyes flashing amber in the candlelight. "Commander Varn, head of the Royal Guard." "Still locked in his chambers," another voice replied. "The king's trying to coax him out." "Coax?" Varn snorted. "The boy needs discipline, not coddling. He's 11 years old and can't control his shift. It's pathetic." "Careful," the other man warned. "That's the heir you're talking about." "The heir," Varn repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. "A weakling alpha who cries when he transforms. The pack won't follow him. They'll rip him apart the first time he shows vulnerability." Elena's grip tightened on her tray. She'd heard the whispers about the young prince. Kael, they called him. His mother had died in childbirth. His father was the most feared alpha in 3 kingdoms, and the boy had inherited power he couldn't begin to understand. The court called him unstable, dangerous, a liability. She felt a pang of sympathy, quickly buried. Sympathy was a luxury she couldn't afford. A door slammed open at the far end of the hall. The crowd fell silent. King Ronan emerged from a side chamber, his expression carved from ice. Behind him, stumbling and wild-eyed, came a boy. Elena's breath caught. Kyle was small for his age, all sharp angles and too pale skin. His dark hair was disheveled, his formal clothes rumpled as if he'd been fighting someone. But it was his eyes that stopped her, bright, burning gold, flickering with something untamed and terrified. His hands were clenched into fists, his whole body trembling. He looked like a caged animal moments from breaking. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court," Ronan's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "My son, Kael Drax, heir to the obsidian throne." Polite applause rippled through the hall. Elena heard the hollowness in it. No one believed this boy would survive long enough to inherit anything. Kael's eyes darted around the room, landing on faces that ranged from curious to contemptuous. His breathing quickened. Elena saw the shift beginning, the flicker of gold in his irises intensifying, his fingers starting to curve into claws. "No," she heard him whisper. "No, no, no. Kael." Ronan's voice was firm but not unkind. "Control it." "I can't." The boy's voice cracked. "Father, I can't." "You can." Ronan placed a hand on his son's shoulder, and Elena saw the boy flinch. "Breathe. Focus. You are the heir. You are Alpha. You control the beast, not the other way around." But Kael wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on something across the room. Commander Varn, who was watching him with undisguised disgust. The boy's lip curled back, revealing teeth that were beginning to sharpen. "Pathetic," Varn murmured, just loud enough to be heard. That was the spark. Kael lunged. It happened so fast that most of the court didn't have time to react. One moment the boy was standing beside his father, the next he was mid-shift, his body contorting as wolf and human warred for dominance. His cry became a snarl, raw and desperate, and he launched himself not at Varn, but at Elena. She didn't know why. Maybe because she'd been standing closest. Maybe because her stillness had drawn his chaotic attention. Maybe because something in him recognized her as prey, and prey was easier to attack than the predators who mocked him. Time slowed. Elena saw the boy hurtling toward her, half transformed, claws extended, eyes blazing with uncontrolled fury. She heard the gasps, the shouts, the scrape of chairs as guards moved to intercept. She felt the tray slip from her hands, heard the crash of glass and silver on marble. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but running meant death. Running triggered the full hunt, and more than that, some deeper part of her, some stubborn core that had survived 3 years in hell, refused to give these monsters the satisfaction of seeing her panic. So Elena did something that no one expected. She stood perfectly still, raised her chin, and met the boy's eyes. "Kael." Her voice was steady, quiet, cutting through the chaos. "Kael, stop!" His body slammed into her, driving her back against a column. Claws raked her shoulder. She felt the burn, the blood, but she didn't cry out. His face was inches from hers, twisted and feral, spit flying from fanged jaws. And Elena looked at him, really looked at him, past the rage, past the beast, straight into the terrified child underneath. "You're afraid," she said softly. "I know, but you're safe. You're safe, Kael." The hall had gone deathly silent. She could feel hundreds of eyes on them, feel the tension coiling like a spring about to break. She knew what happened next in this world. The human who dared to touch an alpha, who dared to speak out of turn, who caused a scene at a royal gathering? Execution. Public, brutal, immediate. But she couldn't stop now. Slowly, carefully, Elena raised one hand and placed it on the boy's chest. His heart was hammering like a war drum under her palm. His claws were still extended, pressed against her throat, one twitch away from opening her jugular. "Breathe with me," she whispered. "In and out. In and out." Something flickered in his wild eyes. Confusion. Recognition. "You're not in danger," Elena continued, her voice low and rhythmic. "No one here will hurt you. You're stronger than the fear. You're stronger than the beast. You are Kael. You are the heir, and you are in control." His breathing began to slow. The gold in his eyes dimmed slightly. "That's it," Elena breathed. "You're doing so well. Just keep breathing." Around them, the court watched in frozen disbelief. Commander Varn's hand was on his sword. Lady Seren had backed away, her face pale. The guards had weapons drawn, but seemed unsure what to do. Attack the heir? Attack the human? Wait for the king's command? And Ronan? Elena didn't dare look at him. She could feel his presence like a physical weight, could sense his attention locked on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. But she kept her focus on Kael. The boy's claws slowly retracted. His fangs shrank back into human teeth. The fur receded from his skin, and his body settled back into its natural form. A small, shaking, 11-year-old boy who looked like he was about to shatter. "I'm sorry," Kael whispered, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean... I can't control it. I can't..." "Yes, you can," Elena said firmly. "You just did." His eyes widened. I did?" "You stopped. You pulled yourself back. That's the hardest part." She offered him a small, careful smile. "The rest gets easier." For a moment, they just stood there, a human and a monster child, connected by something the court didn't understand. Then Kael did something that would change everything. He collapsed against her, wrapping his arms around her waist, and started to cry. Elena froze. This was worse than the attack. This was... She didn't even have a word for what this was. Alphas didn't cry. They didn't show weakness. They certainly didn't seek comfort from prey. But Kael was sobbing into her blood-stained dress, his whole body shaking with the force of it, and Elena found her arms moving of their own accord, wrapping around the boy, holding him steady. "It's all right," she heard herself say. "You're all right. I've got you." "Enough!" The word cracked through the hall like thunder. Kael jerked back, his eyes wide with fear, and Elena finally looked up at the dais. King Ronan Drax was standing now, his expression unreadable, but his eyes blazing with something Elena couldn't identify. Rage? Confusion? Something else entirely? "Commander Varn," Ronan's voice was cold as winter. "Secure the boy." "Your Majesty!" Elena started before she could stop herself. Every eye in the hall snapped to her. She felt the weight of their stares like physical blows. A human had just interrupted the king. A human had just dared to speak without permission. A human had just signed her own death warrant. But Kael was clinging to her hand, his fingers desperately tight, and Elena wouldn't let them drag him away like a criminal. "Please," she said quietly, dropping her gaze in a show of submission. "He's calm now. Let me take him to his chambers. No guards, no spectacle. Just let him rest." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Ronan spoke, and his voice was deadly soft. "You presume to give orders in my court?" "No, Your Majesty." Elena kept her head bowed. "I presume nothing. I only ask for mercy. For the child." "The child who just attacked you?" "The child who is afraid and overwhelmed and needs someone to believe he's more than his worst moment." Another silence. This one stretched so long that Elena began to wonder if she'd finally pushed too far. Then she heard footsteps, heavy, measured, coming closer. Ronan descended from the dais. The crowd parted before him like water. He crossed the hall in long strides, and Elena forced herself to stay still as he approached, forced herself not to tremble even as every cell in her body screamed danger. He stopped in front of her. She could see his boots, black leather reinforced with steel, could smell cedar and smoke and something wild that made her hindbrain howl with warning. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. Elena raised her eyes slowly, past the broad chest, past the powerful shoulders, until she met his gaze. Up close, Ronan Drax was terrifying, not because of his size or his power, but because of the intelligence in those gold eyes, the calculating assessment, the sense that he could see straight through her skin to the secret she kept buried. "What is your name?" he asked. "Elena Voss, Your Majesty." "Elena Voss." He repeated it slowly, as if tasting each syllable. "How long have you served in my house?" 3 years, Your Majesty." "And in those 3 years, have you ever witnessed a human calming a shifting alpha?" "No, Your Majesty." "Have you ever heard of such a thing?" "No, Your Majesty." "Yet you did it." It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway. I don't know what I did. I just didn't want him to be afraid." Something flashed across Ronan's face. Surprise? Suspicion? Before Elena could identify it, it was gone, replaced by cold authority. "Commander Varn, Lady Seren, clear the hall. This gathering is concluded." Protests rippled through the crowd, but no one argued. Within minutes, the obsidian hall emptied, leaving only Ronan, Elena, Kael, and a handful of guards positioned at the exits. Ronan looked down at his son, still clinging to Elena's hand. Kael, are you injured? His boy shook his head mutely. Did you intend to harm this woman? No! Kael's voice was desperate. I don't know what happened. Everything was too loud and everyone was staring, and Commander Varn said I was weak, and I lost control. I'm sorry, Father. I'm so sorry. The question is not whether you're sorry. Ronan's voice softened slightly. The question is whether you can learn from this. I don't know how. Tears were streaming down Kael's face again. I try so hard, but the beast just takes over and I can't stop it, and everyone hates me, and… Kael. Elena squeezed his hand gently. Breathe. Remember? The boy gulped air, nodding, his eyes fixed on her like she was a lifeline. Ronan watched this exchange with an expression that made Elena's stomach twist. Then he did something she didn't expect. He knelt down, bringing himself to his son's level. Kael, listen to me. You are not weak. You are not a failure. You have power that most alphas don't achieve until adulthood, and you're trying to control it with an 11-year-old's mind and heart. That is not shameful. That is extraordinary. Kael stared at his father, hope and disbelief warring on his face. But everyone says, I don't care what everyone says. Ronan's voice was firm. You are my son. You are the heir, and you will learn to master your gift. I promise you that. But how? The desperation in the boy's voice was heartbreaking. No one can teach me. The trainers are afraid of me. The council wants me locked away. Mother's gone and you're always busy with the kingdom, and I'm so tired of being alone. Ronan's jaw tightened. For just a moment, Elena saw something human in the king's eyes. Regret, perhaps. Or pain. Then he looked at Elena, and his expression shifted to something unreadable. You, he said quietly. What did you do to calm him? Elena chose her words carefully. I didn't do anything special, Your Majesty. I treated him like a person, not a threat. I acknowledged his fear instead of punishing it. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes, Ronan repeated. He stood, towering over both of them. Tell me, Elena Voss, do you understand what you've done here tonight? She hesitated. I've overstepped. Badly. I know that. I'm prepared to accept whatever punishment. You've made my son believe he can be saved. The words hung in the air between them. That is either, Ronan continued slowly, the kindest thing anyone has done for him in years, or the cruelest trick imaginable if you can't deliver on that promise. Elena's throat went dry. Your Majesty, I didn't make any promises. You did. His eyes bored into hers. The moment you held him, the moment you told him he was strong, the moment you made him believe he wasn't alone, you promised. And now he won't let you go. As if to prove the point, Kael's grip on her hand tightened. Father, please. Can she stay? Just for tonight? Please? Kael, please. The desperation in his voice was razor sharp. I just want one night where I'm not alone with the dark and the beast and the fear. Just one night, please. Ronan closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, Elena saw the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. A king's decision. A father's decision. Elena Voss, he said formally, I am offering you a choice. You may return to your quarters and resume your duties as before. What happened here tonight will be forgotten, your record cleared, no punishment rendered, or… Elena's heart hammered. Or you may accept a new position in my household. You will serve as Kael's companion and stabilizer. You will stay with him, help him learn control, provide the comfort he seems to require. In exchange, you will be given quarters in the royal wing, protection from the court, and resources to carry out your duties. It sounded too good to be true. Which meant… What's the catch? Elena asked quietly. A ghost of a smile touched Ronan's lips. The catch, Miss Voss, is that you will be living in close quarters with an unstable alpha who could kill you without meaning to. You will be under constant observation, because the court will assume you're either a spy, a witch, or something worse. You will be trapped in a gilded cage, unable to leave the fortress without permission, unable to trust anyone, unable to predict when my son's next breakdown will occur. He paused. And if you fail, if you can't help him, if he loses control again, if anything happens to suggest you're a threat to this house, I will have no choice but to eliminate you, quickly and quietly. Elena's blood ran cold. You're asking me to risk my life? I'm asking you to save my son's life, which, yes, may cost you your own. She should refuse. She should run. She should take the out he was offering and disappear back into the shadows where humans belonged. But Kael was looking up at her with those desperate, hopeful eyes, and Elena realized with sinking certainty that she'd already made her choice the moment she'd decided not to scream. I accept, she said quietly. Ronan nodded slowly, as if he'd known what she would say. Then we have an accord. Commander, escort them to the West Tower. Prepare the blue suite for Miss Voss. Post guards. Discreet ones. No one is to disturb them tonight without my express permission. Your Majesty. One of the guards stepped forward, his voice uncertain. The council will want answers. They'll say the human bewitched the boy, that she's dangerous. The council, Ronan said coldly, will say what I tell them to say. Dismissed. The guards bowed and moved to flank Elena and Kael, but before they could leave, Ronan reached out and caught Elena's arm. His grip was gentle but unbreakable, his eyes boring into hers. One more thing, Miss Voss, he said softly. I meant what I said about observation. I will be watching you. Every moment, every decision, every interaction with my son. If I see anything that suggests you're manipulating him, using him, or hiding something dangerous, I won't hesitate. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Do you understand? Elena met his gaze steadily despite the fear clawing at her throat. I understand, Your Majesty. Good. He released her arm. Then welcome to the palace, Elena Voss. I hope you survive it. The West Tower was beautiful and isolating in equal measure. Elena's new quarters were 3 rooms, a bedroom, a sitting room, and a small bathing chamber, all decorated in shades of blue and silver. The furniture was fine, the bed soft, the windows tall and filled with moonlight. It was the nicest place Elena had lived in years. It felt like a very expensive prison. Kael had fallen asleep almost immediately, curled up in a chair near the fireplace, still holding the edge of Elena's blood-stained sleeve. She'd tried to move him to his own chambers, but he'd woken with a gasp of panic, and she'd quickly promised she wouldn't leave. Now she sat in the quiet, watching the boy sleep, trying to process what she'd just agreed to. Footsteps in the hall. Elena tensed, but it was just a servant, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, bringing bandages and salve for her shoulder. Let me see that, the woman said quietly, kneeling beside Elena's chair. The young master got you good. Elena winced as the woman cleaned the claw marks. They weren't deep, but they burned. He didn't mean to. Of course not. The woman worked efficiently, her voice low enough not to wake Kael. But that don't change the danger. You know what you've gotten yourself into, girl. I'm starting to get a sense of it. The woman finished wrapping the bandages. Word of advice from someone who served this house for 30 years? Don't trust the kindness. Don't trust the protection. And definitely don't trust the king when he looks at you like you're a puzzle he's determined to solve. Elena's breath caught. What do you mean? The woman stood, gathering her supplies. I mean, His Majesty ain't survived this long by being sentimental. If he's keeping you close, it ain't just for the boy's sake. He wants to know what you are. I'm just human. Are you? The woman's eyes were sharp. Because I've worked in this palace through 3 generations of Drax rulers. I've seen humans, witches, seers, and things that don't got names. And I ain't never seen one of them do what you did tonight, calm a shifting alpha with just her voice in her hands. She leaned close. So either you're lying about being human, or you're something this world ain't seen in a very long time. Either way, girl, you'd best figure out which before the king does, because when he finds out what you really are, she straightened. That's when the real danger begins. She left before Elena could respond, the door clicking shut with a finality that made Elena's skin crawl. Alone again. Well, alone except for the sleeping child and the guard she could sense just outside the door. Elena looked down at her hands. Ordinary hands. Human hands. What am I? The question echoed in the silence. unanswered. Outside, the moon rose higher over the fortress, casting long shadows across the stone. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, lonely, haunting, calling to something deep in the darkness. And in the throne room, King Ronan Drax stood at a window, staring out at his kingdom, thinking about a quiet human girl who shouldn't exist, who'd done the impossible, who'd made his son believe in salvation. What are you, Elena Voss? It was the same question Elena was asking herself, and neither of them knew that the answer would tear the Empire apart. But they would learn, soon, very soon. The first crack had already formed, the rest would follow. And when the breaking came, it would change everything. Elena woke to the sound of breathing that wasn't her own. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the tower, the deal, the blood on her dress. Then she felt the weight against her side and looked down to find Kyle pressed against her, his small body curled tight, his hand fisted in the fabric of her sleeve. He'd crawled into her bed sometime during the night. Elena's first instinct was panic. This was the heir to the obsidian throne sleeping beside her like a frightened child seeking comfort from a nightmare. If anyone saw this, if the court found out, they'd twist it into something sinister. They'd say she was manipulating him, grooming him, using forbidden magic. But when she tried to ease away, Kyle's grip tightened and he made a small, desperate sound in his sleep. Not quite a whimper, not quite a growl. Something caught between human and beast, between child and monster. Elena stilled. Slowly, carefully, she settled back down, letting the boy rest. Outside, dawn was breaking over the fortress. Through the tall windows, she could see the sprawl of the Empire, stone buildings and training yards, guard towers and walls that stretched for miles. Beyond that, forest dark as ink, mountains sharp as teeth. It was beautiful in a brutal way, like everything else in this world. The door to her chambers opened without warning. Elena's heart lurched, but she forced herself to remain calm as a figure entered, not a guard, not a servant. King Ronan Drax stood in her doorway, still dressed in the formal clothes from last night, his expression unreadable as he took in the scene, his son curled against the human girl, both of them tangled in blankets and dawn light. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Ronan's voice, quiet and controlled. "How long has he been here?" "I don't know, Your Majesty. I woke up and he was already—" Elena trailed off, unsure how to explain without making it sound worse than it was. Ronan stepped into the room, moving with that predatory grace that made Elena's instincts scream. He approached the bed, looking down at his son with an expression she couldn't name. Not quite tenderness, not quite pain. Something caught between the two. "He used to do this with his mother," Ronan said softly. "Climb into her bed when the nightmares got too loud. She'd hold him until dawn, singing old songs I never learned the words to." His jaw tightened. After she died, he stopped sleeping entirely for nearly a month. The healers said his mind was shutting down from exhaustion. We tried everything, potions, spells, restraints. Nothing worked. Elena stayed quiet, sensing this was a confession the king hadn't meant to make. "Finally, he collapsed during a training session," Ronan continued. "Slept for 3 days straight. When he woke, he was different, harder, more controlled. I thought it was progress." He looked at Elena, and there was something raw in his eyes. But he wasn't learning control. He was learning to bury everything so deep that even he couldn't feel it anymore. And last night, when the court pushed too hard, when Varn mocked him, he stopped then. "You gave him permission to feel again." "I didn't mean—" "I know." Ronan's voice was firm, but not unkind. "Which is why I'm here, to explain what happens next." Elena braced herself. "The council convenes in 2 hours," Ronan said. "They will demand answers. They will want to know what you are, how you calmed an alpha in mid-shift, why I'm allowing a human to remain in the royal wing. Lady Saren is already spreading rumors that you're a witch. Commander Varn believes you're a spy from the Resistance. And Lord Cassian—" He paused, something dark flickering across his face. "Lord Cassian thinks you're something far more dangerous." "What does he think I am?" "A remnant." The word hung in the air like a curse. Elena had heard whispers of remnants in her 3 years at the fortress, beings from the old world before the shapeshifters rose to power. Humans with gifts that made them equal to predators. The Empire had hunted them to extinction 2 generations ago, burning their bloodlines out of history, or so everyone believed. But remnants are extinct, Elena said carefully. So we thought. Ronan's eyes were sharp as glass. Until last night, when you did something that should be impossible. When you touched an alpha in feral state and lived. When you spoke to the beast and it listened. He leaned closer. Tell me, Elena Voss, have you always been able to do this? I've never done anything like this before, Elena said honestly. I've never even been near a shifting alpha until last night. I saw a scared child, and I reacted. By doing the one thing that should have gotten you killed. Yes. Ronan studied her for a long moment, and Elena forced herself to hold his gaze. Finally, he straightened. The council will test you, he said flatly. They'll want proof that you're not a threat. And their idea of proof involves pain, fear, and breaking down your defenses until whatever you're hiding comes to the surface. Elena's blood ran cold. What kind of test? The kind you don't walk away from if you fail. He glanced at his sleeping son. Which is why I'm giving you a choice, Miss Voss. You can leave now, before the council convenes. I'll provide safe passage to the border, enough coin to start a new life, and a story to explain your disappearance. You'll be free. And Kael? Kael will survive. But even Ronan didn't sound convinced. I'll find another way to help him. Elena looked down at the boy. In sleep, he looked so young. Too young to carry the weight of an empire. Too fragile to survive the brutal world his father ruled. His hand was still wrapped around her sleeve, holding on like she was the only solid thing in his universe. She thought about running, about freedom, about a life where she wasn't walking a razor's edge between survival and execution. Then Kael made that small, desperate sound again, and Elena's decision crystallized. I'm staying, she said quietly. Ronan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Approval? Relief? Before Elena could identify it, he nodded once, sharp and final. Then prepare yourself, Miss Voss. The council meets at 8 bells. Don't be late. And whatever happens, he paused at the door. Don't lie to them. They can smell deception like blood in water. Tell the truth, even if it damns you. It's the only chance you have of surviving what comes next. He left as silently as he'd arrived, the door clicking shut behind him. Elena sat in the quiet, her heart hammering, Kael's warmth pressed against her side. She'd just agreed to walk into a trap with her eyes wide open. She wondered if that made her brave or foolish. Probably both. The council chamber was everything Elena expected, and worse. Circular, windowless, lit by torches that cast writhing shadows across stone walls carved with scenes of conquest. A dozen high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by a predator who looked at her with varying degrees of suspicion, disgust, and hunger. And at the center, elevated above the rest, King Ronan Drax on a smaller version of his throne, his expression carved from ice. Kael stood beside Elena, his hand wrapped tight around hers. Ronan had tried to make him wait outside, but the boy had thrown such a violent fit, teeth bared, claws extended, eyes blazing gold, that the king had relented. Now Kael pressed close to Elena's side, his whole body vibrating with tension. State your name for the record, Lady Saren's voice cut through the chamber. She was seated to Ronan's right, her silver hair pulled back in a severe style, her eyes cold as winter. Elena Voss, Elena said clearly. Occupation prior to last night? Server in the Obsidian Hall. And now? Elena glanced at Ronan, who gave the slightest nod. Companion to the heir. Murmurs rippled through the council. Elena saw the way they looked at her, like she was an insect that had crawled onto their table. Disgusting but fascinating. Commander Varn leaned forward, his amber eyes sharp. Tell us exactly what happened last night, Miss Voss. Leave nothing out. So Elena told them. She described the gathering, Kael's entrance, the moment he'd lost control. She explained how she'd stood still instead of running, how she'd spoken to him, how she'd touched him. She left out nothing, even though she could see their expressions darkening with every word. When she finished, silence. Then Lord Cassian spoke. He was older than the others, his face lined with age and scars, his eyes a pale yellow that seemed to glow in the torchlight. You expect us to believe that you, a human with no training, no gifts, no power, Somehow calmed a feral alpha with nothing but soft words and a gentle touch? I don't expect anything, my lord, Elena said carefully. I only know what happened. What happened, Cassian repeated slowly, is impossible. Unless... He stood moving around the circle until he was directly in front of her. Unless you're not really human at all. Elena's pulse spiked, but she kept her voice steady. I assure you, I am entirely human. Then you won't mind proving it. Before Elena could ask what he meant, Cassian moved, fast, faster than anything human should move. His hand shot out and clamped around her wrist, his claws extending just enough to pierce her skin. Kale snarled and lunged, but two guards materialized from the shadows, holding him back. The boy thrashed, his eyes going wild, but they were too strong. Let her go! Kyle's voice cracked with rage and fear. Let her go or I'll... You'll what? Cassian didn't even look at him, his attention fixed on Elena's face. Feel that, girl? That's silver in my claws, pure silver, toxic to any creature with magic in their blood. If you're human, it'll burn a bit, but nothing more. If you're something else... He pressed harder, and Elena felt the poison spread up her arm like fire. Well, we'll see. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Elena gasped, her vision blurring, but she forced herself to stand still, to not pull away. Because pulling away meant guilt, meant fear, meant giving them exactly what they wanted. Stop this. Ronan's voice cut through the chamber, cold and commanding. You've made your point, Cassian. Have I? Cassian didn't release her. Because I'm not seeing any reaction beyond normal human pain. No transformation, no defensive magic, no hidden power rising to protect her. He leaned closer to Elena. Unless you're very, very good at hiding what you are. I'm not hiding anything, Elena gritted out. The silver was burning through her veins now, making her nauseated and dizzy. I'm human. Just human. Then explain last night. I can't explain it. The words burst out of her, raw and desperate. I don't know why he listened to me. I don't know why I didn't run. I just saw a child who was terrified, and I couldn't just let him suffer alone. Silence fell. Then Cassian released her abruptly, and Elena stumbled. Kale broke free from the guards and caught her, his arms wrapping around her waist, his face pressed against her side. Interesting, Cassian murmured, studying them both. The human tells the truth. About her ignorance, at least. She genuinely doesn't know what she is. Because she's human, Lady Seren interjected. A human who got lucky, nothing more. Lucky? Cassian laughed, the sound bitter. No human gets that lucky around a feral alpha. No, there's something else at play here, something old. He looked at Ronan. Your Majesty, I formally request we conduct the binding trial. The reaction was immediate. Several council members gasped. One cursed. Lady Seren went pale. And Ronan's expression turned to stone. Absolutely not, he said, his voice deadly quiet. It's the only way to know for certain, Cassian pressed. The binding trial reveals true nature. If she's human, she'll survive with minor trauma. If she's something more, he shrugged, then we'll know what we're dealing with. The binding trial hasn't been used in 50 years, Ronan said coldly. For good reason. It's barbaric, unpredictable, and has a mortality rate of 40% for pure humans, Cassian interrupted. But 98% survival for those with power. So if Miss Voss truly is what she claims, she has better odds than most. He smiled, and it was a terrible thing. Unless you're afraid of what we might discover, Your Majesty? Elena saw the trap close. Ronan couldn't refuse without looking like he was protecting her, which would only fuel the rumors. But agreeing meant putting Elena through something that could kill her. I'll do it, Elena heard herself say. Every eye in the room turned to her. I'll do the binding trial, she repeated, louder this time. If it proves I'm human and ends this suspicion, then I'll do it. Elena, no. Kael's voice was small and broken. She looked down at him, forcing a smile she didn't feel. It's all right. I'll be fine. You don't know that. I know that I'm telling the truth, and the truth always wins in the end, right? It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Kael nodded anyway, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Ronan stood slowly, his gaze locked on Elena with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Miss Voss, do you understand what you're agreeing to? No, Your Majesty, Elena said honestly, but I'm agreeing anyway. Something flickered across his face. Respect? Admiration? Concern? Before the mask of authority slid back into place. Very well, he said. The binding trial will commence at sundown tomorrow. That gives Miss Voss 24 hours to prepare. Council dismissed. As the chamber emptied, Elena felt the weight of what she'd just done settle on her shoulders. She'd bought herself a day. One day to figure out what she was, why Kael responded to her, and how to survive a trial designed to break her. One day to prepare for the moment that would either prove her innocence or expose the truth she didn't even know she was hiding. The hours blurred together in a haze of fear and preparation. Kael refused to leave her side, following her through the tower like a shadow. Elena tried to act normal, tried to keep the terror off her face, but the boy was too perceptive. You're scared, he said quietly as they sat in her chambers that afternoon. I can smell it. Elena didn't bother denying it. Yes. Because of the trial? Yes. Will it hurt? Elena thought about lying, about protecting him from the truth. Then she remembered Ronan's advice. Don't lie. They can smell deception. Probably, she said softly. But I'll get through it. I always do. Kael was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't want you to die. The simple, desperate honesty of it broke something in Elena's chest. She pulled the boy close, holding him tight. I don't want to die either, she whispered, so I'll fight. With everything I have. I promise. What if it's not enough? Then, Elena hesitated. Then you'll remember that someone believed you were worth saving, that someone saw the best in you, even when the beast was winning. And you'll use that to become the king they need you to be. I don't want to be king without you. Elena closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of him, child and wolf, and something wild she couldn't name. You're stronger than you know, Kael. You'll survive this. You'll survive everything. The door opened. Elena looked up to find a servant, the same woman from last night, carrying a tray of food. Thought you might be hungry, the woman said, setting the tray down. Then quieter. Though I doubt you can eat. Not really, Elena admitted. The woman nodded, then produced a small vial from her pocket. Drink this before the trial. It won't stop the pain, but it'll keep you conscious longer, give you a better chance. Elena took the vial carefully. Why are you helping me? Because I've lived long enough to recognize when the world's about to change, the woman said simply. And you, girl, you're the catalyst. Whether you survive tomorrow or not, nothing will be the same after. She headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth. I hope you make it. This place could use someone who doesn't flinch from kindness. She left before Elena could respond. Night fell. Kael finally drifted into an uneasy sleep on the couch, and Elena was left alone with her thoughts and the vial of mysterious liquid. She should be planning, preparing, strategizing. Instead, she found herself at the window, staring out at the empire bathed in moonlight. Somewhere out there, humans lived in fear. Somewhere, children learned to make themselves invisible. Somewhere, people were dying because they were born without claws or fangs or power. And here she was, in the heart of the beast, about to undergo a trial that could kill her. It was absurd, impossible, utterly insane. The door opened again. This time, it was Ronan. He didn't announce himself, didn't knock, just stepped into her chambers like he owned them, which Elena supposed he did. You should be resting, he said quietly. I can't sleep. Neither can I. He moved to stand beside her at the window, and Elena was acutely aware of his presence, the heat radiating from him, the barely contained power, the scent of cedar and smoke. I came to tell you something about the trial. Elena's stomach clenched. What about it? It's not just pain, Ronan said slowly. The binding trial forces you to confront your true nature. It strips away all your defenses, all your lies, all the walls you've built to protect yourself. And then it shows you, and everyone watching, exactly what you are at your core. He turned to look at her. Whatever you're hiding, Elena Voss, even from yourself, tomorrow it will be exposed. There's no escaping it. I'm not hiding anything, Elena said, but even she could hear the doubt in her voice. Everyone's hiding something, Ronan replied. The question is whether what you're hiding will save you or destroy you. Elena turned to face him fully. Why are you telling me this? Why do you care if I survive? For a long moment, Ronan didn't answer. Then, because my son believes in you, and I haven't seen him believe in anything since his mother died. His voice dropped. And because when I look at you, I see something I can't explain, something that makes every instinct I have scream that you're important, that you're... He stopped, jaw tightening. I don't know what you are, Elena Voss, but I know that if you die tomorrow, something crucial dies with you, something this empire needs, even if it doesn't know it yet. Elena's breath caught. You're afraid. I'm terrified, Ronan admitted, and the honesty of it was staggering. Of what you might be, of what it means if you survive, of what it means if you don't. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched the bandages on her shoulder where Kael's claws had marked her. You shouldn't have survived this. The silver should have killed you, or at least done more damage. But you're already healing faster than you should. Your eyes... He stopped. They flash sometimes. Just for a moment. Like there's something underneath, waiting. Elena pulled back, her heart racing. You're imagining things. Am I? Ronan's gaze was piercing. Or am I the only one willing to see what's right in front of me? Before Elena could respond, a sound cut through the night. A howl, long and mournful, rising from somewhere deep in the fortress. Kael jerked awake with a gasp, his eyes wild, and Elena immediately moved to his side. It's all right, she murmured, wrapping her arms around him. Just the night watch. You're safe. But Kael was trembling, his eyes fixed on his father. The beast is coming. I can feel it. It knows about tomorrow. It knows you're in danger, and it's angry. The beast? Elena looked between father and son, confused. Ronan's expression had gone grim. He means his wolf, the part of him that doesn't think, only feels. It's been protective of you since last night. He knelt down to his son's level. Kael, you need to control it. If the beast emerges during the trial... I can't control it. Kael's voice was rising, panicked. It's too strong. It wants to protect her, and if they hurt her, Father, it'll kill everyone. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Ronan stood slowly, his face unreadable. Then he looked at Elena, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. The terrible math of a king who had to weigh one life against thousands. I should cancel the trial, he said quietly. No. Elena's voice was firm. That'll only make things worse. The council will say you're protecting me because I've bewitched you and Kael. The rumors will spread, and eventually someone will force the issue in a way you can't control. She squeezed Kael's shoulders. But I need you to promise me something, Kael. No matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what you see, what you hear, how much pain I'm in, you stay in control. You don't let the beast take over. Can you do that? But can you do that? Elena repeated, more firmly. Kael's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. I'll try. That's all I ask. Elena looked up at Ronan. And you, Your Majesty, if I don't survive, don't. If I don't survive, she continued, promise me you won't give up on him. Promise me you'll find another way to help him control his power. He deserves that much. Ronan's jaw worked for a moment, then, you have my word. It was all Elena could ask for. The king left shortly after, but Kael refused to go back to sleep. Instead, he sat pressed against Elena's side, his hand wrapped around hers, counting down the hours until dawn. Until the trial. Until everything changed. Sundown came too quickly. Elena was escorted to the arena, an open courtyard in the heart of the fortress, surrounded by high walls and filled with spectators. It seemed the entire court had come to watch. Some looked curious. Some looked hungry. Most looked like they were expecting entertainment. At the center of the arena stood a stone platform carved with symbols Elena didn't recognize. Ancient symbols, pulsing with a faint light that made her skin crawl. Lord Cassian waited beside it, dressed in ceremonial robes, his expression solemn. Elena Voss, step forward. Elena walked to the platform on legs that threatened to buckle. Kael had been forced to watch from a balcony high above, flanked by guards under strict orders to restrain him if necessary. Elena could feel his eyes on her, could sense his terror even from this distance. Ronan stood at the edge of the arena, his arms crossed, his face an unreadable mask. "The binding trial is simple," Cassian announced to the crowd. "The subject stands within the circle. The ancient magic awakens, and the truth is revealed." He looked at Elena. "If you're human, the magic will test your will and find nothing. You'll experience pain, fear, and exhaustion, but you'll survive. If you're something more—" He smiled coldly. "Well, we'll see." Elena stepped onto the platform. The moment her feet touched the stone, the symbols flared bright. Energy surged up from the ground, wrapping around her like chains she couldn't see. Elena gasped as the pressure built. Not pain, not yet, but presence. Like something ancient and vast was pressing down on her, looking for cracks. "Let it begin," Cassian intoned. The magic slammed into Elena like a physical blow. She cried out, her knees buckling, but she forced herself to stay upright. The energy was everywhere, probing, searching, tearing through her memories, her fears, her secrets. "What are you?" the magic seemed to ask. "Show me what you hide." "I'm human," Elena gasped. "I'm just human." Liar. Pain exploded through her body. Not physical pain. This was deeper, worse. It felt like her soul was being torn apart, examined piece by piece. She saw flashes of memory. Her childhood in a village that no longer existed. Her capture by the Empire's soldiers. The 3 years of servitude and survival. Normal memories. Human memories. But underneath something stirred. Something that had been sleeping. Something that woke up the moment Elena had touched Kael, had seen his fear, had felt his pain as if it were her own. There the magic purred. "There it is. Show us." "No," Elena whispered. I don't know what that is." "Show us or be destroyed." The pain intensified. Elena screamed, her body arching, every nerve on fire. Through the haze, she heard Kael roaring her name, heard the sound of a struggle as the guards fought to hold him back. She was going to die. The magic was going to tear her apart because she couldn't give it what it wanted, couldn't show it something she didn't understand herself. Unless— Elena stopped fighting. She let go of her fear, her resistance, her desperate need for control. She opened herself to the magic, to whatever was hidden in her core, and whispered, "Show me." The world exploded into light. Elena saw, felt, understood things that should be impossible. She saw energy flowing through everything, through the stone, the air, the people watching. She saw the threads that connected all living things, bright and pulsing and beautiful. She saw Kael on the balcony, his beast raging against his control. And she saw the thread between them, thicker than the others, glowing with an intensity that made her gasp. She saw Ronan, his thread wound tight with duty and grief and something else, something that reached toward her, tentative and confused. And she saw herself. Not human, not entirely. Something else, something that had been dormant, sleeping, waiting for the right moment to wake. A gift or a curse passed down through generations, hidden so deeply that even she hadn't known it existed. The power to connect, to feel what others felt, to soothe the beast and strengthen the broken and bridge the gap between prey and predator. A remnant, the last of her kind. The realization hit Elena like a thunderbolt, and with it came a surge of energy so powerful that the magic of the binding trial shattered. The symbols went dark. The pressure vanished, and Elena collapsed to the stone, gasping, alive. Alive. The arena erupted into chaos. "She survived," someone shouted. "Impossible!" "What is she?" Elena struggled to her hands and knees, her whole body shaking. She looked up to find the entire court staring at her with expressions ranging from awe to terror to something that looked like hunger. Lord Cassian stepped forward, his face grave. "The trial has revealed its verdict. Elena Voss is not human." He paused, letting the words sink in. "She is a remnant, the first we've seen in 2 generations. He turned to Ronan. "Your Majesty, by law, all remnants are to be executed immediately. The decree was signed by your grandfather, sealed by your father, and has stood for 50 years. The words fell like stones. Elena saw Kyle's face go white, saw Ronan's expression turn to granite. "No! Kale's voice cracked across the arena. No, you can't. She didn't do anything wrong. The law is clear, Cassian replied. Remnants are dangerous. Their power is unpredictable. They were eliminated because they posed a threat to our entire species. He looked at Elena, and there was something almost sad in his eyes. I'm sorry, girl. You seem kind. But the law is the law. Guards moved forward, weapons drawn, and Ronan spoke, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. No! Everyone froze. Your Majesty, Cassian started. I said no. Ronan descended into the arena, his presence filling the space, his authority absolute. I am king, and I am changing the law. The arena exploded into shouts of protest, but Ronan ignored them. He walked straight to Elena, standing between her and the guards, his body a wall of protection. This woman saved my son's life, he said, his voice carrying to every corner. She calmed him when no one else could. She offered kindness when the rest of you offered only cruelty and fear. And now you want to kill her for being different? He turned, addressing the entire court. The old laws were written in fear. They eliminated an entire people because we were afraid of what they could do. But fear is not wisdom. Fear is weakness. He looked at Cassian. And I will not let weakness rule my empire. The council will never allow it, Cassian began. The council, Ronan interrupted coldly, serves at my pleasure. And if they cannot accept this decision, they are welcome to challenge me for the throne. His eyes flashed gold, his power radiating like heat. Any takers? Silence. No one moved. No one dared. Finally, Cassian bowed his head. As you wish, Your Majesty. Ronan turned back to Elena, extending his hand. Can you stand? Elena took his hand, letting him pull her to her feet. She was shaking so hard she could barely stay upright, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, Ronan murmured. I've just painted a target on both our backs. From the balcony, Kael let out a sob of relief, and Elena realized that surviving the trial was only the beginning. Now came the real test, surviving the aftermath in a court that wanted her dead. The fortress felt different after the trial. Elena could sense it in the way servants averted their eyes when she passed, in the whispers that followed her through corridors, in the weight of stairs that pressed against her back like knives. She was no longer invisible. She was the remnant who shouldn't exist, the creature the king had defied his own council to protect. She was a walking target. 3 days had passed since Ronan's declaration. 3 days of confined quarters, increased guards, and a tension so thick Elena could taste it on her tongue like copper. Kael hadn't left her side except to sleep in his own chambers, and even then, he fought it every night. Now they sat in the library, surrounded by ancient texts Ronan had ordered brought to them. Books about remnants, their gifts, their history. Most of it was propaganda. Stories of monsters who'd enslaved shapeshifters, who'd used their powers to bend alphas to their will. But buried in the lies, Elena found fragments of truth. Remnants hadn't been conquerors. They'd been bridges. They could feel the emotions of others, could soothe rage and strengthen courage. They'd served as peacekeepers, mediators, healers of the spirit rather than the body. And the shapeshifters had slaughtered them because power that couldn't be controlled by tooth and claw was power that terrified them. You're doing it again, Kael said quietly. Elena looked up from the book. Doing what? That thing with your eyes. They glow sometimes, just a little. He tilted his head, studying her. It's pretty, like starlight. Elena touched her face self-consciously. I don't feel any different. Maybe you're just finally becoming who you were supposed to be. Kael shifted closer, his voice dropping. The books say remnants could control alphas. Make them do anything. Is that true? I don't know, Elena said honestly. I don't feel like I'm controlling anyone. You control me, Kael said simply. When the beast is raging and I can't think and everything's too loud, you make it quiet. You make me feel safe. He paused. Father says that's not control. He says that's trust. But I heard Lord Cassian telling Commander Varn that trust is just another word for manipulation when it comes to your kind. Elena's chest tightened. What do you think? Kael looked at her with those two old eyes. I think you saved my life. And I think anyone who wants to hurt you for that is wrong. He hesitated. But I also think you're in more danger than Father's telling us. Before Elena could respond, the library door burst open. Ronan strode in, his expression grim, followed by 2 guards and the servant woman who'd helped Elena before. The woman's face was pale, her hands shaking. Your Majesty. Elena started to stand. Stay seated. Ronan cut her off. His voice was harsh, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. We have a problem. Elena's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? The kind that could get us all killed. Ronan nodded to the servant woman. Tell her. The woman stepped forward, wringing her hands. There's been talk in the lower levels, among the staff and the outer guards. She swallowed hard. They're saying you bewitched the king, that you're using your remnant powers to control him and the young master, that you're planning to overthrow the throne and bring back the old order. That's insane, Elena breathed. I'm not. I know that, the woman interrupted. But they don't. And Lord Cassian's been feeding the rumors. He's been holding secret meetings with members of the council, with commanders from the outer territories. He's building support for... She trailed off, looking at Ronan. For a coup, Ronan finished flatly. He plans to remove me from power, citing my compromised judgment and unnatural attachment to a remnant. He'll install himself as regent until Kael comes of age. And the first thing he'll do as regent is execute you, Elena, and present your head to the council as proof of his loyalty to the old laws. The words landed like blows. Elena felt Kael tense beside her, heard his breath hitch. When? Elena asked, her voice surprisingly steady. We don't know exactly. Soon. Maybe days, maybe hours. Ronan moved to the window, staring out at the fortress. I have loyalists, but Cassian's been careful. He's turned key commanders, poisoned the minds of influential lords. If it comes to open conflict, I'm not sure I can win without significant bloodshed. Then let me go, Elena said immediately. If I leave, if I disappear, they'll have no reason to move against you. No. Both Ronan and Kael spoke simultaneously. Kael grabbed her hand. You can't leave. You can't. If she leaves, they'll hunt her down within a day, Ronan said, his voice hard. Cassian wants her dead. Running won't save her. It'll just make her an easier target. Then what do we do? Elena asked. Ronan turned from the window, and Elena saw something dangerous in his eyes. Something calculating. We prove you're not a threat, publicly and undeniably. How? The spring summit is in 2 days. Every major alpha in the Empire will be here. Territory lords, pack leaders, military commanders. It's a gathering designed to demonstrate strength, resolve disputes, maintain order. He crossed his arms. We'll use it to demonstrate yours. Elena's blood ran cold. I don't understand. The summit includes trials, Ronan explained. Tests of strength, skill, loyalty. Alphas compete to prove their worth, settle challenges, establish hierarchy. He met her eyes. You're going to participate. You're going to show the entire empire that your power isn't about control or domination. You're going to prove that remnants can coexist with shapeshifters, that you make us stronger, not weaker. You want me to fight? Elena's voice cracked. Against alphas? I'll be killed in seconds. Not fight. You'll face the gauntlet of truths. The servant woman gasped. Even the guards looked shocked. Your Majesty, that's... one of them started. Necessary, Ronan cut him off. He looked at Elena. The gauntlet is an ancient test. It's designed to expose lies, reveal true intentions, break through deception. Alphas rarely volunteer for it because it's uncomfortable. But it's also undeniable. If you survive it, if you prove your intentions are pure, no one can claim you're manipulating us. The gauntlet doesn't lie. What does it involve? Elena asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Ronan's expression darkened. Pain, fear, isolation. You'll be subjected to scenarios designed to break your will, to force out your darkest truths. And it happens in full view of the court. Everything you think, everything you feel, everything you've hidden, it all becomes public. So it's like the binding trial, but worse. Much worse. Ronan moved closer, his voice dropping. The binding trial tested your nature. The gauntlet tests your soul. and not everyone who enters comes out intact. Elena looked at Kael, who was staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. Then at the servant woman, who looked like she wanted to protest, but didn't dare. Then back at Ronan. If I refuse? Then Cassian moves within days. We fight a war we might lose, and even if we win, the Empire tears itself apart from the inside. Ronan's jaw tightened. I'm not going to lie to you, Elena. This is a terrible choice, but it's the only one we have. Elena closed her eyes. She thought about running, about fighting, about all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about Kael, about the boy who'd clung to her in the dark, who'd believed she could save him when no one else did. She thought about Ronan, who'd defied his entire council to protect her. And she thought about all the other humans living in fear, all the people who'd been taught that they were nothing, that they deserved the cruelty inflicted on them. Maybe she couldn't save them all, but she could try to change the story, to prove that strength came in more forms than claws and fangs. I'll do it, Elena said, opening her eyes. I'll face the gauntlet. Kael made a small, broken sound. Ronan's expression didn't change, but she saw his shoulders drop slightly. Relief, maybe. Or dread. Then we prepare, Ronan said. You have 2 days to learn everything you can about your gifts, about what you're capable of. And Elena, he paused. Don't hold anything back in there. The gauntlet punishes deception. Whatever you're feeling, whatever truth is buried in you, let it out. It's your only chance. The next 2 days were a blur of training and terror. Ronan brought in the only scholar in the fortress who'd studied remnants, an ancient woman named Thera, who looked at Elena with a mixture of fascination and pity. Your gift is empathy, Thera explained as they worked in a sealed chamber deep in the tower. You feel what others feel, and you can influence those emotions. Not control. True remnants never controlled. But you can amplify calm, strengthen courage, soothe rage. You're an emotional anchor. How do I use it deliberately? Elena asked. So far it just happens. Because you haven't learned to direct it. Thera moved around her, studying her like a specimen. Your power is tied to your emotions. When you care about someone, when you want to help them, the gift activates naturally. But in the gauntlet, you won't have that luxury. You'll be isolated, terrified, surrounded by hostile energy. You need to learn to channel the gift even when you're breaking apart. They practiced. Hour after hour, day after day. Thera would project hostile emotions at Elena, rage, disgust, fear, and Elena had to learn to not absorb them, to stay centered, to push back with her own energy. It was excruciating. Every session left Elena drained, nauseated, shaking, but slowly she began to understand. The gift wasn't about forcing anything. It was about connection, about opening herself to others' pain and offering something better in return. You're learning, Thera said on the second evening. But understand, the gauntlet is designed to break remnants. It isolates you from all positive emotion, surrounds you with darkness, and forces you to face every fear and doubt you've ever had. Most remnants who've faced it in history went mad. The ones who survived came out changed. Changed how? Thera's expression was grim. Harder, colder. Some lost the ability to feel anything at all. The gift requires an open heart, Elena. But the gauntlet punishes openness. It's a contradiction you'll have to navigate. Elena absorbed this, fear coiling in her gut. But she didn't back down. That night, unable to sleep, she found herself on the balcony of her chambers. The fortress spread below her, dark and sprawling, lit by torches and moonlight. Beautiful and brutal. Like everything in this world. You should be resting. Elena turned to find Ronan standing in her doorway. He'd come directly from some meeting, still in his formal clothes, his hair disheveled, exhaustion carved into his face. Couldn't sleep, Elena said. Too much in my head. Ronan stepped onto the balcony, maintaining a careful distance. Thera says you're progressing quickly, that you have more natural ability than any remnant she's read about. That's not as comforting as you think, Elena said wryly. Given that all the remnants she's read about are dead. A ghost of a smile touched Ronan's lips. Then it faded. I need to tell you something. About the gauntlet. Elena braced herself. What? It's not just about surviving, it's about what happens after. Ronan moved to the balcony railing, his hands gripping the stone. If you succeed, if you prove yourself, tradition demands that you be offered a position of honor, a role in the court. It's an old law designed to integrate those who pass the most difficult trials. That sounds good? It would be, except Cassian knows this, which means he's planning something, a trap within the trap. Ronan turned to look at her. I don't know what form it'll take, but I know him. He won't let you walk out of that gauntlet free and honored. He'll find a way to twist it, to use your own success against you. Elena's chest tightened. So what do I do? Be ready for anything. Trust your instincts. And Ronan hesitated, something raw flickering in his eyes. Remember that no matter what you see in there, no matter what the gauntlet shows you, it's designed to break you. Don't let it. Easy for you to say, Elena said softly. You're not the one stepping into it. No. Ronan's voice was quiet. But I'd take your place if I could. The honesty of it stunned her. Elena stared at this king, this alpha, this predator who defied his entire empire to protect her. And she saw the weight he carried, the impossible choices, the loneliness of power, the love for a son he didn't know how to reach. Why? Elena asked. Why are you doing this? Really? Is it just for Kael? Ronan was silent for a long moment. Then, at first, yes. I would have done anything to help my son, but now... He turned fully toward her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Now I'm doing it because I think you're going to change everything. I think you're the catalyst this empire needs to evolve past the old brutality. And I think... He stopped, jaw tightening. I think if you die, something vital dies with you. Something I didn't even know we'd lost until you showed us it still existed. Hope, Elena whispered. Compassion, Ronan corrected. The ability to see past the beast to the person underneath. You did that for Kael. You're doing it for me. And if you survive tomorrow, maybe you can do it for the whole empire. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. That's a lot of pressure. I know. Ronan reached out, and for a moment Elena thought he might touch her. Instead, his hand hovered between them, uncertain. But you're strong enough to carry it. You've already proven that. Before Elena could respond, a sound cut through the night. A bell, deep and resonant, ringing from the fortress tower. The warning bell. Ronan's expression shifted instantly, all softness vanishing. That's the alarm for an exterior breach. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Kael. What's happening? But Ronan was already moving, shifting as he ran. Human form flowing into something larger, more dangerous. His clothes tore as his body expanded, muscles rippling, bones restructuring. Within seconds, a massive black wolf stood where the king had been, his eyes still that burning gold. Then he was gone, leaping from the balcony to the courtyard below with impossible grace. Elena stood frozen for a heartbeat. Then she ran to the door, locking it as ordered. But she couldn't just hide, not when something was clearly wrong. She moved to the window, peering out at the fortress. Chaos. Guards were running toward the eastern wall. She could hear shouts, the clash of steel, the roars of shapeshifters in combat. Fire bloomed in the darkness, bright orange, spreading fast. An attack. But from who? Then she saw them. Figures pouring over the eastern wall, moving with predatory speed and coordination. Not soldiers, not organized military. These were rogues, shapeshifters who'd abandoned the pack structure, who lived by their own brutal rules. And they were heading straight for the tower, straight for her. Elena's blood turned to ice. This was the trap. This was Cassian's plan. He'd hired rogues to attack during the night, to create chaos, and in that chaos, the door to her chambers exploded inward. Elena spun, her heart hammering, as three figures entered. Not rogues, worse, Lord Cassian, flanked by two of his personal guards. Miss Voss, Cassian said pleasantly, though his eyes were cold as death, I'm afraid we're in danger. The fortress is under attack, and I've come to escort you to safety. Liar, Elena breathed. Cassian's smile widened. Smart girl. Yes, I arranged this little distraction. The rogues think they're being paid to cause chaos and steal supplies. They don't know their real purpose is to provide cover for your unfortunate death. He gestured to his guards. Take her, quietly. Make it look like the rogues did it. The guards moved forward. Elena backed away, her mind racing. She had no weapons, no training, no way to fight trained alphas. But she had her gift. Elena closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, finding that well of energy Thera had helped her identify. She opened herself to the guards' emotions, felt their anticipation, their loyalty to Cassian, their cold determination. And she pushed back. Not with fear, not with rage, with something simpler, doubt. Wait, one guard said suddenly, stopping. Lord Cassian, if we do this, if we kill the king's protected, we'll be following the true law, Cassian snapped. The law that says remnants must die. Now move. But the seed was planted. Elena felt it taking root, felt the guard's hesitation growing. She's manipulating you, Cassian snarled. Don't listen to whatever she's... The door burst open again. Kael stood in the doorway, half transformed, his eyes blazing gold and furious. Get away from her. Cassian turned, his expression shifting to something almost sympathetic. Young master, this doesn't concern you. Return to your chambers. I said get away from her. Kael's roar shook the room. Power exploded from him, raw, uncontrolled, terrifying. The guard stumbled back, and even Cassian looked shaken. Kael, no! Elena started forward, but it was too late. The boy was fully shifting now, his body contorting, bones cracking, fur sprouting. But something was wrong. The transformation wasn't smooth. It was chaotic, violent, like his body couldn't decide what form to take. And his eyes, they weren't just gold anymore. They were burning, like twin suns, radiating a power that made the air itself tremble. Impossible, Cassian whispered. That's not... He shouldn't be able to... Elena understood in a flash. Kael wasn't just an alpha. He was something more, something rare and dangerous that appeared once in a generation. An apex predator, the kind of shapeshifter whose power could dominate entire packs, whose presence could force other alphas to submit without a fight. And he was about to lose complete control. Kael! Elena shouted over the sound of his transformation. Kael, listen to me. You need to stop. If you let the beast take over now, you'll hurt people you don't mean to hurt. But Kael wasn't hearing her. The beast was too strong, the rage too overwhelming. She could feel it radiating from him, a maelstrom of fury and fear and desperate love, all tangled together and spiraling out of control. Elena did the only thing she could think of. She ran straight at him. Elena, no! Cassian's shout was lost in the chaos. Elena reached Kael just as his transformation completed. He was massive now, larger than any wolf she'd ever seen, with fur black as midnight and eyes like burning stars. His jaws could crush her skull, his claws could tear her apart. But Elena didn't hesitate. She threw her arms around his neck, pressing her face against his fur, and opened her gift completely. Every wall she'd ever built, every defense, every careful control, she tore them all down and flooded Kael with everything she felt. Love, trust, gratitude, calm, the absolute certainty that he was good, that he was strong, that he was more than his worst moment. The effect was immediate. Kael's body went rigid. The rage radiating from him stuttered, faltered. Elena felt his confusion, his disbelief that anyone would touch him while he was like this, that anyone would offer comfort instead of fear. I'm here, Elena whispered against his fur. I'm right here. You're safe. I'm safe. Everyone's safe. You don't need to fight. You don't need to destroy. You just need to breathe. Slowly, so slowly, she felt the tension drain from Kael's massive body. His breathing steadied. The burning in his eyes dimmed to normal gold, and then he was shifting back, his body shrinking, fur receding. Within moments, an 11-year-old boy stood where the monster had been, tears streaming down his face, his whole body shaking. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I just heard them planning to hurt you, and I couldn't. Shh. Elena pulled him close, cradling his head. You did perfectly. You protected me. You're amazing. Behind them, Cassian had recovered from his shock. Seize them both, he ordered his guards. But the guards didn't move. They were staring at Elena and Kael with expressions that looked almost like awe. My lord, one said quietly, the boy is an apex. If we move against his chosen protector, I don't care what he is. Cassian's composure was cracking. She's a remnant. She's corrupting him, controlling him. I'm not controlling anyone, Elena said, still holding Kael. She looked at the guards, meeting their eyes. I'm just trying to keep a child safe. That's all I've ever been trying to do. If that makes me a threat to your empire, then your empire is built on something rotten. The words hung in the air. Then footsteps, heavy, rapid, accompanied by growls and the sound of steel. Ronan burst into the chamber, still in wolf form, his muzzle stained with blood. Behind him came a dozen guards, weapons drawn. He took in the scene, Cassian and his guards, Elena holding Kael, the broken door, and his eyes went molten with rage. Ronan shifted back to human form, not bothering with modesty, his body radiating lethal intent. Explain, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Now! Cassian drew himself up. Your Majesty, I came to protect the remnant from the rogue attack. Your son arrived in a feral state and... Liar. Kael's voice was small but clear. He came to kill Elena. He said the rogues were a distraction. He ordered his guards to make it look like they did it. Ronan's gaze swung to his son. Kael, are you certain? I heard him. I was outside the door and I heard everything. Kael's voice grew stronger. He planned it, Father. He planned all of it. For a long moment, Ronan simply stared at Cassian. Then he smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Elena had ever seen. Commander! Ronan's voice rang through the tower. Arrest Lord Cassian and his guards. Charges of treason, conspiracy to murder, and attempted regicide. Your Majesty, you can't... Cassian started. I can, and I will. Ronan stepped forward, and even in human form, he was overwhelming. You hired rogues to attack my fortress. You planned to murder someone under my direct protection, and you did it all because you couldn't accept that the world is changing. He leaned close. You're done, Cassian. And when I'm finished investigating, I'll find everyone who helped you, and they'll be done too. Guards swarmed forward, seizing Cassian and his men. The old lord struggled, his composure finally shattering completely. You're making a mistake, Cassian shouted as they dragged him away. That creature will destroy us all. She'll corrupt your son, twist your mind, bring back the old order. You're damning the empire for a... The door slammed shut, cutting off his words. Silence fell. Ronan stood in the center of the destroyed chamber, his chest heaving, blood and dirt streaked across his skin. Then he looked at Elena and Kael, and his expression softened. Are you hurt? He asked quietly. No, Elena said. We're okay. Kael saved me. Ronan's gaze moved to his son. An apex manifestation, at 11 years old. His voice was filled with something Elena couldn't name. I didn't think it was possible. Is that what that was? Kael asked, his voice small. Yes. Ronan knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with his son. You're not just an alpha, Kael. You're something rarer, something stronger, and you use that power not to dominate, not to destroy, but to protect someone you love. He pulled Kael into a fierce embrace. I'm so proud of you. Kael burst into tears, clinging to his father, and Elena felt her own eyes burn. After a moment, Ronan stood, still holding Kael's hand. He looked at Elena, and there was something raw in his gaze. The gauntlet happens tomorrow as planned, he said. But understand, Cassian's arrest won't stop his allies. If anything, it'll make them more desperate. They'll use the gauntlet to destroy you one way or another. He paused. It's not too late to run, Elena. I can get you out of the fortress tonight, hide you somewhere safe. Elena looked at Kael, who was watching her with desperate hope. Then at Ronan, who was offering her an escape she knew he couldn't really afford to give. Then she thought about every human who'd ever been told they were worthless. Every person who'd been taught that strength only came from violence. No, Elena said firmly. I'm not running. I'm going to face the gauntlet. I'm going to prove that remnants aren't the enemy. She lifted her chin. And then I'm going to help you build an empire where children like Kael don't have to be afraid of their own power. Ronan stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded, slow and solemn. Then tomorrow, he said quietly, everything changes. And Elena knew, with a certainty that settled in her bones, that he was right. Tomorrow, in the gauntlet of truths, she would either prove that a new world was possible, or she would die trying. The fortress burned around them, rogues still fought in the courtyards below, and somewhere in the dungeons Cassian plotted his revenge. But Elena stood tall, Kael's hand in hers, Ronan's gaze heavy with trust and fear, and she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Power. Not the kind that came from claws or fangs, the kind that came from choosing to stand when running would be easier, the kind that changed empires. The storm was coming. And Elena was ready to face it. Dawn broke over the fortress like a blade splitting the sky. Elena stood at the window of her chambers, watching the first light paint the stone walls gold and crimson. She hadn't slept. Every time she'd closed her eyes, she'd seen the gauntlet, imagined 1,000 different ways it could destroy her. Behind her, Kael slept fitfully on the couch, having refused to return to his own rooms. Ronan had left hours ago to manage the aftermath of the attack, to interrogate captured rogues, to shore up defenses against whatever Cassian's allies might try next. 12 rogues dead, 8 captured. The rest had fled into the forest when they realized their employer had been arrested. The fortress bore scars, burned buildings, broken walls, blood-stained courtyards, but it had survived. Now came Elena's turn. A knock at the door, soft and respectful. Elena opened it to find Thera, the ancient scholar, carrying a wooden box. "I brought you something," Thera said, entering without waiting for permission. She set the box on the table and opened it, revealing a circlet made of twisted silver and dark stone. This belonged to the last remnant who faced the gauntlet and survived. Her name was Mira. She wore this as a focus, something to anchor herself when the darkness tried to pull her under. Elena touched the circlet carefully. It was surprisingly warm, thrumming with a faint energy that resonated with something in her chest. What happened to her? She survived the trial, proved her worth, was granted a position of honor as the king's advisor. Thera's expression darkened. 3 months later, she was found dead in her chambers. They said it was poison, but no one was ever charged. The investigation was incomplete. Elena's blood ran cold. "You're saying even if I survive today, you'll still have enemies who want you dead," Thera finished bluntly. "But at least you'll have proven you deserve to live. That's more than most remnants got." She placed the circlet on Elena's head, adjusting it carefully. "The gauntlet will show you things, memories, fears, alternate futures. It'll try to break you by making you believe you're weak, that you're alone, that no one will come for you. Remember, it's all illusion. The only truth that matters is the one you carry inside." "And what truth is that?" Thera smiled, sad and knowing. "That you're stronger than you know, and braver than you believe." She headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Elena, when you're in there and it feels like you're drowning, don't fight the current. Dive deeper. Sometimes the only way out is through." She left before Elena could ask what that meant. Kael stirred, his eyes opening slowly. When he saw Elena wearing the circlet, his expression crumpled. "You look like a queen." "I look like I'm about to be sacrificed," Elena said, trying for humor and failing. Kael got up, crossing to her in 3 quick strides. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pressing his face against her stomach. "Don't die," he whispered. "Please, I can't lose you too." Elena stroked his hair, her throat tight. "I'm going to fight as hard as I can. Promise me if it gets too bad, you'll stop. You'll give up before it kills you. Kael, promise me." His voice cracked. "I don't care about proving anything to those people. I don't care about the Empire or the laws or any of it. I just care about you. So please, please promise me you won't die for their approval." Elena knelt down, bringing herself to his eye level. She took his face in her hands, looking into those gold eyes that had seen too much pain for someone so young. "I promise," she said softly, "that I will do everything in my power to come back to you. But Kael, if I give up in there, if I quit because it's hard, then they win. Then every person who's ever said remnants are weak, that humans are worthless, that only predators deserve respect, they all win, and I can't let that happen. Not for me, but for everyone like me who never got a chance to prove they were worth more than the world told them." Tears streamed down Kael's face. That's not fair. Why do you have to be the one to prove it? Because I'm here. Because I can. Because someone has to be first. Elena pulled him into a fierce hug, and because a very brave boy once showed me that sometimes the scariest thing we can do is also the most necessary thing. A heavier knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal Ronan, dressed in formal armor, his expression carved from stone. But his eyes were turbulent with something Elena couldn't name. It's time, he said quietly. The arena had been transformed overnight. Where the binding trials platform had stood, now rose a structure that made Elena's breath catch. It was a cage, no, a labyrinth, made of black iron and glass, stretching 30 feet high and twice as wide. The walls were etched with symbols that glowed with a sick, pulsing light, and at the center, suspended by chains, hung a sphere of dark crystal that seemed to drink in the sunlight. The heart of truth, Elena realized. The core of the gauntlet. The stands were packed. Every alpha in the Empire seemed to have gathered. Territory lords in their finest, pack leaders with their warriors, commanders with their soldiers. Thousands of eyes, all fixed on her with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt to barely concealed hunger. And scattered among them, Elena saw Cassian's allies. She recognized them from the emergency council sessions. Lord Vex with his scarred face, Lady Morrigan with her cold beauty, Commander Thorne with his brutal reputation. They watched her with the patience of predators waiting for prey to stumble. Ronan led Elena to the entrance of the labyrinth, Kael following close behind. The king's face was unreadable, but his hand rested on the hilt of his sword, ready, always ready, to fight if this went wrong. The rules are simple, boss, Ronan announced, his voice carrying across the arena. Elena Voss will enter the gauntlet of truths. She will face trials designed to test her nature, her intentions, and her strength of will. If she emerges intact, with her mind and soul unblemished, she will be declared innocent of all accusations. Her status as Kael's companion will be confirmed, and she will be granted the title of Truth Bearer, a position of honor and protection under imperial law. And if she fails? Lord Vex called out from the stands. If she fails, Ronan said coldly, the gauntlet itself will be her executioner. No one will need to lift a blade. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elena felt their anticipation like a physical weight. One more thing, Ronan continued, turning to face Elena. For a moment, his mask slipped, and she saw raw fear in his eyes. Then it was gone. No one can help you in there. No one can reach you. You'll be completely alone with whatever the gauntlet shows you. Trust yourself, Elena. And remember, he leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. The darkest truths are usually the ones we're most afraid to face. Don't run from them. Then he stepped back, formal and distant once more. Begin. The entrance to the labyrinth opened with a grinding sound like bones breaking. Elena looked at Kael one last time. The boy was being held back by two guards, his face streaked with tears, his whole body shaking with the effort of not transforming and tearing the whole structure down. I love you, Kael mouthed. Elena touched her heart, then pointed at him. I love you too. Then she turned and walked into the gauntlet. The entrance sealed behind her with a sound like a tomb closing. At first, there was only darkness. Elena stood in absolute blackness, unable to see her hands in front of her face. The circlet on her head thrummed with faint warmth, the only anchor she had to reality. Then light bloomed, cold, blue, sick. It revealed a corridor stretching ahead, its walls made of that strange glass. And in the glass, Elena saw reflections, not of herself, of everyone who'd ever hurt her, the soldiers who'd burned her village, the guards who'd laughed when new human servants arrived, terrified and broken, the nobles who'd treated her like furniture, Lord Cassian's cold eyes, Lady Seren's disgusted sneer. You're nothing, the reflection seemed to whisper. You've always been nothing, prey pretending to be more. Elena's breath came faster. She forced herself to keep walking, to not look at the faces pressing against the glass. But they followed her, multiplying, their whispers growing louder, worthless, weak, pathetic. The corridor opened into a larger chamber, and there, in the center, Elena saw herself. Or rather, she saw what she might have become if she'd never met Kael. A hollow-eyed woman in servant's clothes, bent and broken, all light gone from her eyes. This version of Elena stared at her with dead hopelessness. "This is what you really are," the hollow Elena said. "A victim. That's all you'll ever be. You think one moment of kindness changes anything? You think saving one boy makes you special?" "I don't need to be special," Elena said, her voice shaking. "I just need to be kind." "Kindness is a luxury of the powerful," the hollow Elena laughed bitterly. "You're not powerful. You're food that learned to talk." Pain lanced through Elena's skull, sharp, vicious, making her gasp. The gauntlet was digging into her mind, pulling at her deepest insecurities. "Dive deeper," Thera's voice echoed in her memory. "Sometimes the only way out is through." Elena closed her eyes and stopped fighting. She let the pain wash over her, let the doubts rise up, let herself feel every ounce of fear and worthlessness and shame she'd been burying for 3 years. And underneath all of it, she found something else. Rage. Not the wild, uncontrolled fury of Kael's beast. This was colder, sharper. The rage of someone who'd survived when they shouldn't have, who'd endured when it would have been easier to break, who'd chosen kindness not because it was easy, but because cruelty had already taken enough from her. "You're right," Elena said, opening her eyes. "I'm not powerful. I'm not special. I'm just someone who refused to let this world make me into something ugly." She stepped toward her hollow reflection. "And that's enough. That's always been enough." The hollow Elena screamed, a sound of pure anguish, and shattered like glass. The chamber dissolved. Elena found herself in a new space, this one even worse. She was back in her village, the night of the burning. She could smell smoke, hear screams, feel the heat of flames consuming everything she'd ever known. And there, in the center of the square, stood her younger self. 12 years old, frozen in terror, watching her mother die. "You could have saved her," the child Elena said, her voice hollow. "If you'd been brave, if you'd been strong. But you hid. You ran. You let her burn." The guilt was overwhelming. Elena fell to her knees, gasping as the memory crashed over her. She'd carried this for 10 years, the knowledge that while her mother had screamed for her, she'd been cowering in a cellar, too afraid to move. "I was a child," Elena whispered. "That's not an excuse." "I know." Elena looked up at her younger self. "I know I couldn't have saved her. I know running was the only reason I survived, but I've hated myself for it every single day since." The child Elena stared at her. "So why are you here? Why do you keep trying to save others when you couldn't save the one person who mattered most?" Elena felt tears streaming down her face. "Because she died telling me to live. Her last words were, 'Run and don't look back and make it mean something.' So that's what I'm doing. I'm making it mean something. Every person I help, every moment of kindness I offer, it's all for her. It's all proof that her sacrifice wasn't wasted." The child Elena's expression shifted. The accusation faded, replaced by something softer, sadder. "You really believe that?" "I have to," Elena said, "because if I don't, then she died for nothing, and I can't accept that." The child reached out and touched Elena's face. Her hand was warm, solid, real. "Then stop punishing yourself." She wouldn't want that. She'd want you to be happy. The village dissolved like smoke. Elena was alone in darkness again, but this time it felt different, lighter, like something had been released. "Well done," a new voice said. Elena spun to find herself face to face with herself. But this version was different. Older, perhaps, or maybe just more complete. Or her eyes glowed with that faint starlight Kael had mentioned, and she wore the circlet like it had been made for her. "What are you?" Elena asked. "I'm what you could become," the other Elena said. "If you stop hiding from your power, if you embrace what you really are. A remnant. More than that." The other Elena circled her slowly. "You're a bridge between two worlds. A translator of pain. Someone who can feel what others feel and use that to build connection instead of division. You could change everything, Elena. Reshape the entire power structure of this empire. Make predators see prey as equals. Make humans realize they're not helpless." She stopped, meeting Elena's eyes. but only if you stop being afraid of what you might become. What if I become something terrible? Elena whispered. What if my power corrupts me? Power doesn't corrupt, the other Elena said. Fear does, isolation does. Believing you're alone and no one will hold you accountable, that's what corrupts. She reached out and took Elena's hands. But you have Kael. You have Ronan. You have people who will tell you when you're wrong, who will keep you human even as you embrace being more than human. Trust them. Trust yourself. The other Elena began to glow brighter, her form becoming translucent. Last trial, Elena, the hardest one. Are you ready? No, Elena said honestly, but I'll face it anyway. The other Elena smiled. Good answer. Then she dissolved, and Elena was falling. She landed in a throne room, but not the one she knew. This was bigger, grander, with walls of gold and floors of polished obsidian. And on the throne sat Ronan. But not the Ronan she knew. This one was older, his face lined with pain, his eyes empty of warmth. And beside him, dressed in formal robes, stood Elena herself. Not a prisoner, not a servant, a queen. Is this the future? Elena asked. A possible future, a disembodied voice answered. The one where you claim power, where you rise from nothing to stand beside the king, where you reshape the empire in your image. Elena watched as the vision played out. She saw herself advising Ronan, saw him listening, implementing her ideas, saw humans being elevated to positions of influence, saw the old brutal laws being dismantled. She saw peace, but underneath the peace, she saw something else. Fear. The court feared her. The alphas whispered about her influence. And slowly, subtly, the empire began to depend on her for everything, for decisions, for guidance, for mediation of every conflict. She saw Ronan, noble and strong, becoming a figurehead, saw herself holding the real power, saw herself becoming the very thing she'd fought against, a ruler who believed their way was the only way. No, Elena breathed. No? The voice sounded surprised. This is what you want, isn't it? To change the world? To make it better? Not like this. Elena stared at the vision of herself on the throne. This isn't making things better. This is just swapping one form of tyranny for another. Real change doesn't come from one person holding all the power. It comes from everyone having a voice, from building systems that don't depend on one person being good or wise or strong. So you refuse power when it's offered? I refuse to be a tyrant, Elena corrected, even a benevolent one. I'll help. I'll advise. I'll use my gifts to build bridges. But I won't rule. That's not what the world needs. That's not what I want. The vision shattered, and Elena was standing in the center of the heart of truth, the dark crystal sphere surrounding her pulsing with energy. Final question, the gauntlet's voice said, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. Why do you want to survive? What's worth living for? Elena closed her eyes. She thought about Kael's smile when he finally managed to control a shift, Ronan's rare moments of vulnerability, the servant woman who'd helped her, Thera's wisdom, every small kindness she'd witnessed in 3 years of hell. I want to live, Elena said clearly, because there's still work to do, because every person who's been told they're worthless deserves someone who believes otherwise, because Kael needs me, because... She stopped, her voice breaking. Because I finally found people worth fighting for, worth dying for. But more importantly, worth living for. The crystal sphere exploded into light. Elena screamed as energy poured through her, not pain, but power. Raw, overwhelming, infinite. Her gift was awakening fully, expanding beyond anything she'd imagined. She could feel every person in the arena, feel their emotions, their fears, their hopes. Could sense the threads connecting them all, and she realized this was her true power. Not control, not manipulation, connection. She was a living web, able to sense and influence the emotional bonds that held societies together. She could strengthen love, ease hatred, build understanding where there had been only fear. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was hers. The light faded. Elena collapsed to the ground, gasping, her whole body shaking. The labyrinth walls dissolved around her, revealing the arena, and the absolute silence that greeted her. Every alpha in the stand sat frozen, staring at her with expressions of shock. Even Cassian's allies looked shaken. because they'd all felt it. That moment when Elena's power had touched them, when her gift had brushed against their minds like a gentle hand. They'd felt her compassion, her strength, her absolute lack of malice. She was exactly what she'd claimed to be, a remnant who didn't want power, only peace. Ronan stood slowly, his face unreadable. Then he descended into the arena, crossing to Elena in long strides. He knelt beside her, his eyes searching hers. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "I think so," Elena managed. "That was intense." "You survived." Ronan's voice was filled with something she'd never heard from him before. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. "You actually survived. Did you doubt me?" "I was terrified," Ronan admitted. "I thought—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "I thought I'd have to watch you die." Before Elena could respond, Kael came tearing into the arena, the guards unable to hold him back any longer. He crashed into Elena, nearly knocking her over, his whole body shaking with sobs. "You're alive! You're alive!" he kept repeating, his face buried in her shoulder. Elena wrapped her arms around him, holding him tight. "I'm alive. I'm okay. We're okay." Ronan stood, addressing the crowd. His voice rang out clear and commanding. "The gauntlet has rendered its verdict. Elena Voss has proven her innocence, her strength, and her pure intentions. By the ancient laws of our people, she is hereby granted the title of truth-bearer and placed under the full protection of the imperial throne." A moment of stunned silence. Then, from somewhere in the stands, someone began to clap. Slowly, hesitantly at first. Then others joined. Within moments, the entire arena was filled with applause. Not enthusiastic, not celebratory, but acknowledging, respectful. They'd seen the truth, and they couldn't deny it. But Elena saw the ones who weren't clapping, Cassian's allies, scattered through the crowd, their expressions dark with rage. Lord Vex rose from his seat, his voice cutting through the applause. "A pretty display," he called out. "But the law is clear. Remnants are to be executed. One trial doesn't change centuries of precedent." "Then I'm changing the precedent," Ronan said coldly. "The old law dies today, and anyone who has a problem with that," his eyes flashed gold, his power radiating like heat, "is welcome to challenge my authority directly." Vex's face went pale. No one spoke. Then Lady Morgan stood. "Your Majesty, the Council requests an emergency session. This decision affects the entire empire. Surely you won't make it unilaterally?" It was a trap, Elena realized. They couldn't challenge Ronan directly, so they were trying to force him into a political battle he might not win. But before Ronan could respond, Kael spoke up, his voice clear and carrying. "My father isn't making it unilaterally. I support it. Elena saved my life. She proved she's not a threat. And if anyone here thinks otherwise," his eyes flashed with that terrifying apex power, "they can answer to me." The effect was immediate. Several alphas who'd been nodding along with Morrigan suddenly looked uncertain. An apex heir, even a young one, was not someone to antagonize. Then, to everyone's surprise, Commander Varn stood. The same man who'd mocked Kael at the heir's presentation. The same man who'd called him weak. "I stand with the king," Varn said gruffly. "I've seen what the girl can do, seen how she calms the heir when nothing else works. That's not a threat. That's an asset, and anyone with eyes can see it." He looked at Cassian's allies. "So stop wasting our time with politics. The law was wrong. The king is right to change it. End of discussion." One by one, other commanders and territory lords began to stand, voicing their support. Not all of them. Cassian's allies remained seated, their expressions murderous. But enough. More than enough. The tide was turning. Ronan looked at Elena, and she saw something unprecedented in his eyes. Gratitude, wonder, and something else. Something that made her breath catch. "Come," he said, offering her his hand. "Let me introduce you properly to the court." Elena took his hand and stood, Kael still pressed against her side. Together, they faced the assembled alphas. "Elena Voss," Ronan announced, his voice formal but warm. "Truth-bearer of the Obsidian Empire, companion to the heir, and the first of her kind to be welcomed into our society rather than destroyed by it." He paused. "Let this moment mark a new era. one where strength is measured not just by tooth and claw, but by courage and compassion, where different doesn't mean dangerous, where we learn from those who aren't like us instead of fearing them. The applause was louder this time, still not universal. Elena could see the pockets of resistance, the faces twisted with rage or disgust. But it was real, substantial. She'd done it. Against every odd, she'd survived. She'd proven herself. But as the crowd began to disperse, as Ronan led her from the arena with Kyle glued to her side, Elena caught sight of Lord Vex speaking urgently to Lady Morrigan, saw Commander Thorne slip away from the stands, heading deeper into the fortress, saw the look in their eyes, not acceptance, not defeat, calculation. The battle wasn't over. She'd won this round, proven she deserved to live. But Cassian's allies weren't going to give up. They'd find another way to strike, another trap to set. Elena's gift pulsed, and she felt it, the undercurrent of rage and fear spreading through certain pockets of the court. People who saw her survival as an existential threat, who would do anything to restore the old order. The war had just begun. But as Elena looked at Kyle, smiling up at her with relief and love and trust, and at Ronan, whose hand still held hers with surprising gentleness, she realized she was no longer fighting alone. She had allies now. She had power. She had purpose. And she was ready for whatever came next. The fortress walls cast long shadows as they walked, the sun beginning its descent. Somewhere in those shadows, enemies plotted. But in the light, surrounded by people who'd chosen to believe in her, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, solid, unshakable hope. The kind that changed worlds. The fortress walls cast long shadows as they walked, the sun beginning its descent. Somewhere in those shadows, enemies plotted. But in the light, surrounded by people who'd chosen to believe in her, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, solid, unshakable hope. The kind that changed worlds. But hope, Elena was learning, came with a price. The emergency council session convened at sunset in the great chamber, a cavernous room Elena had never been allowed to enter before. Now she walked through its doors flanked by Ronan and Kyle, her head held high despite the knot of fear in her stomach. The council table was a massive slab of black stone, carved with the names of every alpha who'd ever ruled. Around it sat the most powerful predators in the Empire, territory lords, military commanders, the heads of ancient bloodlines. And at the far end, still in chains but granted temporary reprieve to speak, sat Lord Cassian. His eyes found Elena immediately, burning with cold hatred. "This is unprecedented," Lady Morgan said as they took their seats. A remnant, attending a council session, sitting at the table as if she were one of us." "She is truth-bearer," Ronan said flatly. "By law, she has the right to attend any gathering that concerns her fate. And since you called this session specifically to debate whether my decision to protect her stands, I'd say this very much concerns her fate." Morrigan's lips thinned, but she didn't argue further. Lord Vex leaned forward, his scarred face grim. "Your Majesty, we understand your attachment to the remnant. Your son's dependence on her is clear, but you're asking us to overturn centuries of law based on one trial. To trust that she won't use her gifts to manipulate us, to control us, to slowly corrupt the entire power structure from within. I'm not asking you to trust her," Ronan said. "I'm ordering you to respect the verdict of the gauntlet, an ancient test that has never been wrong in recorded history. Elena proved her innocence. That should be enough." "It's not enough." Commander Thorne slammed his hand on the table. "The gauntlet tests what someone is now. It doesn't predict what they'll become. Power corrupts, Your Majesty. Even the purest intentions can twist when given enough influence. And this girl..." He looked at Elena with undisguised distrust. "She already has the Heir wrapped around her finger. How long before she has you as well? How long before we wake up to find ourselves ruled by a human who makes us dance like puppets?" "I don't want to rule anyone," Elena said quietly. Every eye turned to her. She felt their attention like physical pressure, but she forced herself to meet their gazes. "I don't want power," she continued. "I don't want to control or manipulate or corrupt. I just want to help Kyle learn to manage his gifts. I want to live without fear. And I want..." She paused, then decided to risk the truth. I want to prove that humans and shapeshifters can coexist without one enslaving the other, that we're better together than apart. That's all. That's everything. Pretty words, Vex said. But words are wind. How do we know you're telling the truth? Because I showed you. Elena's voice strengthened. In the gauntlet, when my power was fully awakened, I touched every person in that arena. You felt what I felt. You sensed my intentions. You know I'm not lying. We felt something, Morgan admitted reluctantly. But feelings can be manufactured. A skilled remnant could project false emotions, make us believe, stop. The voice came from an unexpected source. Commander Varn. He stood, his expression troubled but resolute. I've led soldiers for 30 years. I've interrogated spies, rooted out traitors, learned to spot deception in all its forms. And I'm telling you, the girl is telling the truth. What we felt in the arena wasn't manufactured. It was raw, honest, sometimes painfully so. He looked at Elena with something almost like respect. She doesn't want to rule us. She wants to survive us. There's a difference. A murmur ran through the council. Elena saw some faces softening, reconsidering, but others, Vex, Morgan, Thorn, remained unmoved. Then Cassian spoke, his voice cold and measured despite his chains. You're all fools if you believe this. My fellow counselors, I understand your hesitation to oppose the king directly, but this isn't about politics. This is about survival. He leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. Remnants were eliminated for a reason. They nearly destroyed our species once. They used their gifts to turn alpha against alpha, to fracture packs, to sow discord until we were too broken to fight back. It took 3 generations to hunt them down, to ensure our survival. And now you want to welcome one back with open arms because she made a child stop crying? Kael is not just any child, Ronan said, his voice dangerous. He's the heir, and he's an apex, the first we've had in a century. His power is already beyond what most alphas achieve in a lifetime. If we can't help him control it, he'll destroy himself. Or worse, he'll destroy others without meaning to. Elena is the only person who's been able to reach him. That makes her invaluable. Or it makes her the perfect weapon, Cassian countered. Control the air, control the future. It's elegant, really. I almost admire it. I'm not controlling him. Elena's voice rang out, sharp with frustration. I'm helping him. There's a difference. Is there? Cassian smiled coldly. Then prove it. Right now. Release your hold on him. Step away. Let's see if the boy can function without you. Elena's blood ran cold. She looked at Kyle, who'd gone pale, his hands clenched into fists on the table. Don't, Kale said, his voice small. Please. I need you. You see? Cassian's voice was triumphant. Dependence. Addiction. That's what remnant power creates. She's made herself necessary to him. Soon she'll do the same to others. To you, Your Majesty. To the entire court. And by the time you realize what's happened, it'll be too late to stop her. Ronan's expression had gone thunderous. You're grasping at straws, Cassian. My son's attachment to Elena is natural, healthy. He lost his mother. He found comfort in someone who showed him kindness. That's not manipulation. That's healing. Healing that only she can provide, Vex interjected. That only she controls. Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect, but Lord Cassian raises a valid point. The boy's dependence is concerning. What happens if she dies? What happens if she leaves? Does the heir collapse? Does he lose control completely? That's not fair, Elena said, her voice shaking. You're asking me to make him not care about me, to sever a bond that's helping him survive. That's not protecting him. That's cruelty. It's necessity, Morgan said coldly. The heir cannot be vulnerable, cannot depend on anyone who isn't bound by blood and law to our empire. You're human. You could be killed by any rival pack, any ambitious lord, any random act of violence. And if Kael falls apart when that happens, what becomes of the empire? The words hit Elena like physical blows, because they were right in a twisted way. Kael's dependence on her was genuine, but it was also dangerous. Not because she wanted to control him, but because she was mortal, breakable, a liability in a world of predators. Then protect her. Ronan's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Make her unbreakable. Bind her to the empire with the strongest ties we have. Silence fell. What are you suggesting? Vex asked carefully. Ronan stood, his presence filling the room. I'm suggesting we stop treating Elena as a threat and start treating her as what she is. An asset. A bridge between humans and shapeshifters. A way to evolve past the brutality that's defined us for too long. He looked around the table. The old laws said remnants must be eliminated. I'm proposing new laws. Laws that integrate them. That use their gifts to strengthen rather than threaten. Elena won't be the last remnant we find. The gift runs in bloodlines. There are probably others out there, hiding, terrified of discovery. We can keep hunting them down like animals, or we can offer them a place in our society. You want to recruit remnants? Thorn looked incredulous. Your Majesty, that's revolutionary, Ronan interrupted. Yes, that's exactly what it is. A revolution in how we see ourselves, how we treat those different from us, how we build a sustainable future. His eyes found Elena's. And it starts here, with her, with the choice we make right now. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. He was fighting for her, not just protecting, but advocating, trying to change an entire empire's worldview because he believed she was worth it. But before anyone could respond, the chamber doors exploded inward. Guards rushed in, weapons drawn, their faces pale with panic. Your Majesty, we're under attack! Ronan was on his feet instantly. What force? How many? Not from outside, the guard gasped. From within. Lord Cassian's sympathizers. They've seized the armory, freed the captured rogues, and they're advancing on the throne room. They're calling it a liberation. They're demanding the remnant's execution and your abdication. The chamber erupted into chaos. Lords and commanders leapt to their feet, shouting orders, demanding information. But Elena's gift was already screaming warnings. She could feel the malice rushing toward them like a tidal wave, could sense the rage and determination of the attackers. This was it. The final move. Cassian's allies had decided that if they couldn't win through politics, they'd win through violence. And Elena was the target. Ronan's roar cut through the chaos. Secure the heir! Get Kale to the safe chamber, now! No! Kale grabbed Elena's hand, his eyes wild. I'm not leaving her. Kale, you have to. I won't! Power exploded from the boy, making the walls shake. His eyes blazed with that terrible apex light. I won't leave her to die. I won't. Elena felt his fear, his desperation, his absolute refusal to lose another person he loved. And beneath it, she felt his beast rising, that immense, terrifying power that could level the fortress if it broke free. She had seconds to make a choice. Run, hide, let the Empire tear itself apart over her. Or stand, fight. Prove once and for all that she was worth the revolution Ronan was trying to create. Elena squeezed Kael's hand, then released it. She stepped forward, moving to the center of the chamber, and closed her eyes. Elena, what are you doing? Ronan's voice was sharp with alarm. What I should have done from the beginning, Elena said quietly. Showing them the truth, all of it. She opened her gift completely. Not just to the people in this room, but to everyone in the fortress. Every guard, every servant, every lord and commander and soldier. She reached out with her power, touching thousands of minds simultaneously, and showed them what she'd seen in the gauntlet. She showed them her memories, the burning village, the 3 years of servitude, the constant fear. She showed them her first meeting with Kael, the moment she'd chosen compassion over survival. She showed them every interaction since, every moment of genuine care, every time she'd helped the boy without asking for anything in return. She showed them her heart, raw, unfiltered, undeniable. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The attacking force, rogues and sympathizers who'd been rushing toward the throne room with weapons drawn, stumbled to a halt. Elena felt their confusion, their shock at suddenly being flooded with someone else's truth. In the chamber, counselors gasped. Some swayed on their feet. Even Ronan looked shaken. She's not controlling us, Varn whispered, his voice filled with awe. She's just showing us, letting us feel what she feels. Elena opened her eyes. Blood dripped from her nose. The strain of reaching so many minds at once was immense. But she didn't stop. She turned to Cassian, still chained at the table, and she showed him too. Showed him that she'd never wanted power, never wanted to rule, That every accusation he'd made came from his own fear, not her actions. Cassian's face went white. "Stop," he whispered. "Stop." "Why?" Elena's voice was gentle despite everything. "Afraid of the truth? Afraid that you might have been wrong?" "I wasn't wrong." Cassian's composure finally shattered completely. "I was protecting us. Remnants destroyed my grandfather's pack. They turned brothers against each other, made them fight until none survived. I saw the aftermath as a child, the bodies, the blood, the waste. I swore I'd never let it happen again." Elena felt his truth washing over her, the trauma, the fear, the desperate need to protect his people from something that had once nearly destroyed them. He wasn't evil. He was terrified. "I'm sorry that happened to your family," Elena said softly. "But I'm not those remnants. I'm not interested in sowing discord or turning people against each other. I'm just trying to help one boy survive the power he was born with. That's all I've ever wanted." "But you'll change things," Cassian said, and now his voice was broken, pleading. "You'll change everything. The old order, the old ways, they'll crumble. And what comes after? What if it's worse?" "What if it's better?" Elena countered. "What if we build something where strength doesn't require cruelty? Where different gifts can coexist instead of compete? Where children like Kael don't have to be afraid of what they are?" She took a step toward him. "I know change is terrifying. I know it feels like losing everything you've built. But the alternative is staying trapped in a system that hurts more people than it protects. Is that really what you want?" Cassian stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. "No," he whispered. "No, it's not." The admission rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. Elena turned to face the full council, her voice carrying despite the exhaustion pulling at her. "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking you to completely trust me. I'm just asking for a chance to prove that we can do better, that we can evolve, that the Empire can be strong and compassionate at the same time." She swayed slightly, and Kyle was there instantly, supporting her. "If I fail, if I prove dangerous, then by all means, eliminate me. But let me try. Please." Silence stretched across the chamber. Then Commander Varn spoke, his voice gruff but certain. "I vote to accept the king's proposal, to establish new laws regarding remnants, to give the girl her chance." "Seconded," said Lady Saren, who'd been silent until now. "The gauntlet deemed her worthy. My own judgment confirms it. She has my support." One by one, councillors voiced their votes. Not all of them. Vex and Thorn and a handful of others remained opposed, their faces set in stubborn refusal. But the majority spoke for change, spoke for Elena, spoke for a new future. Ronan stood at the head of the table, his expression carefully controlled but his eyes burning with something Elena couldn't name. "The vote is decided. Elena Voss retains her position as truth-bearer and companion to the heir. Furthermore, I'm establishing a new division within the imperial government, the Office of Integration. Its purpose will be to find other remnants, to offer them safety and training, and to explore how their gifts can benefit the Empire as a whole." He paused. "Elena will lead this office." "Your Majesty, I don't—" Elena started to protest. "You do," Ronan said firmly. "You've proven you can handle power without being corrupted by it. You've shown that remnants can be assets rather than threats. And most importantly," his voice softened, "you've shown my son that he doesn't have to face his gifts alone. That makes you invaluable. To him, to me, to the Empire." Elena felt tears streaming down her face. She wanted to argue, to say she wasn't ready for this kind of responsibility. But Kael was looking at her with such hope, such pride, such absolute trust that she couldn't find the words. "I'll do my best," she finally managed. "That's all anyone can ask," Ronan replied. The council session ended shortly after. The attacking force, confused and shaken by the flood of empathy Elena had unleashed, was rounded up without bloodshed. Cassian was remanded to more secure imprisonment, pending trial for treason. His allies on the council remained in their positions but under close watch. The fortress, battered but unbroken, began to heal. And Elena, exhausted beyond measure, found herself back in her chambers with Kael refusing to leave her side and Ronan insisting on staying nearby for security purposes. "You nearly killed yourself," Ronan said bluntly. pacing the length of the room. Reaching that many minds at once, Thera says it should have burned you out completely. The fact that you're still conscious is miraculous. Or maybe it's proof that remnants are stronger than anyone remembered, Elena said from where she lay on the couch. Kale curled against her side. Maybe that's why you hunted us so thoroughly, because deep down you knew we were a genuine threat to your dominance. Ronan stopped pacing, turning to look at her. Perhaps. Or perhaps we were just afraid of what we didn't understand. He moved to sit in the chair across from them. Elena, what you did today, showing the entire fortress your truth, that took incredible courage and incredible trust. You made yourself vulnerable to thousands of people who could have used that vulnerability to destroy you. I know, Elena said quietly, but it was the only way to make them really see. Words weren't enough anymore. They needed to feel. You could have died. I've been close to dying every day since I arrived here, Elena pointed out. At least this time I chose the risk. Ronan's expression softened. You're remarkable, you know that? Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. I'm just trying to survive. You're changing the world, Ronan corrected, whether you intend to or not. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. The office I'm creating, it's not just politics, I mean it. I want you to find others like you, build a network. Show the Empire that remnants can coexist with us, that we're stronger together. That's a lot of responsibility for someone who was serving drinks a week ago. A week ago, Ronan said softly, you were invisible. Now you're the most important person in my empire aside from my son. Life changes quickly in the palace. Too quickly, Elena muttered, earning a quiet laugh from Kyle. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the exhaustion of the day settling over them like a blanket. Then Kyle spoke, his voice muffled against Elena's side. Are you going to leave now? Now that you have power and protection and everything? Elena's heart clenched. What? No. Kyle, why would you think? Everyone leaves eventually, Kyle said, his voice small and broken. Mother died. Father's always too busy. The trainers got scared and quit. I thought maybe once you were safe, once you didn't need me anymore. Oh, sweetheart. Elena shifted so she could look at him properly. I'm not leaving. Not now, not ever if I can help it. You're not a job to me, Kyle. You're not a means to an end. She struggled to find the words. You're the reason I found my strength, the reason I learned I could be more than what the world told me I was. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. Kale's arms tightened around her, and Elena felt his relief like a physical thing. She looked up to find Ronan watching them with an expression she'd never seen before. Tender, vulnerable, almost envious. He's lucky to have you, Ronan said quietly. I'm lucky to have him, Elena corrected. He saved me just as much as I saved him. Still, Ronan stood, moving toward the door. I should let you rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, and you need... Stay. The word was out before Elena could stop it. When Ronan turned to look at her, surprised, she felt her cheeks heat. I mean, if you want, Kale sleeps better when you're nearby. And She stopped, unsure how to explain that having the king present made her feel safer in a way that had nothing to do with his power and everything to do with who he was. Ronan studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly and returned to his chair. For a while then. They stayed like that, Elena on the couch with Kyle, Ronan in the chair nearby, the three of them forming a strange, unlikely family, until the moon rose high and the fortress settled into the quiet of night. And for the first time since arriving in this brutal world, Elena felt something that seemed impossible: peace. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change. Elena's new office started small, just her and a handful of carefully vetted assistants. But word spread quickly through the Empire's human populations. Remnants who'd been hiding, terrified of discovery, began to emerge cautiously. Most were like Elena, empaths with varying degrees of power, but some had different gifts: healing, foresight, the ability to sense truth or manipulate energy in small ways. Each one came with a story of survival, of hiding, of living in fear, and each one looked at Elena like she was a miracle. You're giving them hope, Thera said one afternoon as they reviewed applications from potential recruits, showing them that being different doesn't mean being dead. I'm just doing what Kael did for me, Elena said, proving they're worth saving. The integration wasn't smooth. There were protests, incidents, moments where old prejudices flared into violence. But slowly, painfully, the Empire began to shift. Commanders who'd fought alongside remnants in training exercises reported back that the empaths made their units more cohesive, more effective. Territory lords who'd hired remnant advisors found disputes being resolved more peacefully. Results spoke louder than fear. And through it all, Kael continued to grow stronger. His control improved daily. The terrifying power that had once threatened to consume him became a tool he could wield with precision. He still had bad days, moments where the beast rose up and everything felt overwhelming, but Elena was always there to help him through it. "You're incredible," she told him one evening after he'd successfully completed a full shift and back without losing control once. "You know that, right? A year ago, you couldn't do any of this." "A year ago, I didn't have you," Kael said simply. He was 12 now, taller, his features starting to sharpen toward the man he'd become. But his eyes were still that same warm gold, still looked at Elena like she hung the moon. "You made me believe I could be more than my worst moments. That changed everything." Elena pulled him into a hug, her throat tight with emotion. "You did the hard work. I just reminded you that you could." Still, Kael's voice was muffled against her shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "Never," Elena promised. "Not ever." Ronan watched from the doorway, unnoticed by either of them. He'd taken to doing that lately, observing the easy affection between Elena and his son, the relationship he'd never quite managed to build himself. There was no jealousy in it, only a quiet gratitude that Kael had found someone who understood him so completely. And maybe, though Ronan was careful not to examine this too closely, there was something else. An attraction he'd been fighting since the night of the gauntlet. A pull toward the woman who'd walked into his empire's prey and somehow become one of its most vital pillars. Elena looked up suddenly, catching his gaze. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement, perhaps, or understanding. She smiled, soft and genuine, and Ronan felt something in his chest crack open. He was falling for her. Had been probably since the moment she'd stood calmly in the face of his feral son and offered compassion instead of fear. He'd tried to deny it, tried to tell himself it was just respect or gratitude or political necessity. But watching her now, exhausted from another long day of building bridges and changing minds, her hair falling loose from its pins, her smile radiant despite everything, Ronan couldn't lie to himself anymore. He loved her. The realization should have terrified him. Love made leaders vulnerable. Love created weaknesses that enemies could exploit. Love had no place in the brutal calculus of ruling an empire. But Ronan found he didn't care. Elena had taught him, taught all of them, that strength could exist alongside compassion, that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that sometimes the bravest thing a king could do was admit he didn't have all the answers. "Elena," he said, stepping into the room. "Could I speak with you, privately?" She looked surprised but nodded, gently extracting herself from Kael's embrace. "Go practice your meditation forms," she told the boy. "I'll check on you before bed." Kael left reluctantly, and Elena turned to Ronan with a questioning look. "Is something wrong?" "No," Ronan said. Then, more honestly, "Maybe. I'm not sure." He crossed to the window, looking out at the empire he ruled. "I wanted to thank you for everything you've done, not just for Kael, but for all of us. You forced us to evolve, to question assumptions we've held for generations, to become better than we were." "You're welcome," Elena said carefully. "But something tells me that's not really why you asked to speak privately." Ronan turned to face her. "You're right. It's not." He took a breath, feeling more uncertain than he had since his coronation. "Elena, I need you to know that what I'm about to say has nothing to do with your position, your office, or your relationship with my son. This is personal." Elena's eyes widened slightly. "Ronan, I care about you," he said, the words coming out rougher than intended. "More than I should, more than is probably wise. And I know the timing is terrible. You're just establishing yourself, building your new life, dealing with enough challenges without adding this complication. But I needed you to know, needed you to understand that when I look at you, I don't see a remnant or a truth bearer or a political asset. I see someone extraordinary, someone brave and kind and frustratingly selfless. Someone I... He stopped, jaw tightening. Someone I love. The silence that followed felt infinite. Elena stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she crossed the distance between them. She reached up and touched his face, a gentle hand against his cheek, her eyes searching his. "You terrify me," she said softly. "You're the most powerful alpha in the Empire. You could destroy me with a word, and part of me will probably always be a little afraid of you." She paused. But another part of me, a growing part, sees past the king to the man underneath. The father who loves his son so fiercely it breaks my heart. The ruler who's trying to change an entire empire because he believes it's the right thing to do. The person who stood between me and a council that wanted me dead, even though it would have been easier to let me go. "Elena, I care about you too," she interrupted. "I don't know if it's love yet. Everything's happened so fast, and I'm still figuring out who I am in this new world. But I care. Deeply. And I want..." She smiled, tentative and hopeful. "I want to see where this goes. If you're willing to be patient with me." Ronan's hand came up to cover hers, pressing her palm more firmly against his face. "I can be patient. I've waited 11 years for my son to find peace. I can wait for you to find yours." "It might take a while," Elena warned. "I'm still learning to not flinch when predators move too fast." "Then I'll move slowly," Ronan said. "For you, I'll move as slowly as you need." He leaned down, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Elena didn't retreat. Instead, she rose up on her toes and met him halfway, her lips touching his in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and full of possibility. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "That was..." Elena started. "Terrifying," Ronan offered. "I was going to say nice," Elena corrected, laughing softly. "But terrifying works too." They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, breathing each other's air. Then Ronan stepped back, giving her space. "I should go," he said, "before the entire palace starts gossiping about the king visiting your chambers at night." "Too late for that," Elena said wryly. "They've been gossiping since the gauntlet." "True." Ronan moved toward the door, then paused. "Elena, no matter what happens between us, no matter if this works or if we decide we're better as friends, I want you to know that you'll always have my protection. Always have a place here. You've earned that 1,000 times over." "Thank you," Elena said softly. "That means more than you know." After he left, Elena stood alone in her chambers, touching her lips, her heart racing. She'd just kissed a king, a shapeshifter, a predator who could kill her without effort, and it had felt right. The world was changing, she was changing, and maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. 1 year later, Elena stood in the Great Hall watching the first graduating class of integrated units, teams of alphas and remnants who'd trained together, learned to fight together, learned to trust each other completely. They were magnificent. Kale stood beside her, now 13 and almost as tall as she was. His control was absolute these days, his power focused and disciplined. He'd grown into his role as heir with a grace that surprised everyone except Elena, who'd always known he had it in him. "They're going to change everything," Kyle said quietly, watching the graduates. "These teams. They're going to show the rest of the Empire what's possible when we stop fighting each other and start working together." "That's the plan," Elena agreed. "Your plan," Kyle corrected. "You did this. You built this." "We built this," Elena said. "You, me, your father, everyone who decided to take a chance on something new. It wasn't just me." "But it started with you," Kyle insisted. "The moment you decided not to run, the moment you chose to save a monster child instead of saving yourself, that's when everything changed." Elena looked at him, this boy who'd become like a son to her, and felt her eyes burn with pride. "You were never a monster, Kale. You were just scared and powerful and alone. And you needed someone to see past the fear to the person underneath." "The way you do for everyone," Kyle said. Then softer, "The way you did for Father." Elena's cheeks heated. Her relationship with Ronan had developed slowly over the past year, careful and deliberate, both of them navigating the complicated dynamics of power, position, and genuine affection. They still hadn't made anything official, hadn't announced any formal arrangement, but everyone knew. The way Ronan looked at her, the way Elena smiled when he entered a room, the way they moved around each other like binary stars, separate but bound by gravity. "Your father is complicated," Elena said carefully. Kyle laughed. "That's one word for it. But Elena, I'm glad. I'm glad he found you. Glad you found each other. You make him happy in a way I haven't seen since Mother died. And you—" He paused. "You don't look afraid all the time anymore. You look like you finally believe you belong here." Elena pulled him into a hug. "I do belong here. Thanks to you." The ceremony concluded shortly after. As the graduates dispersed, Elena felt a familiar presence behind her. "They did well," Ronan said, moving to stand beside her. He didn't touch her, not in public, not yet, but the warmth in his voice was unmistakable. "They did," Elena agreed. "First of many, I hope." "First of hundreds," Ronan corrected. "The council approved expanding the program. By this time next year, we'll have integrated units in every territory. Your vision is becoming reality, Elena." She turned to look at him, this king who'd defied his entire empire to protect her, who'd risked everything to give her vision a chance. "Our vision," Elena said softly. "I couldn't have done any of this without your support. And I wouldn't have survived the last year without yours," Ronan replied. He glanced around, checking that they were relatively private, then reached out and took her hand. "Elena, I know we've been taking things slowly, being careful, but I need to tell you something." Her heart began to race. "What?" "The council has been pushing me to remarry, to provide a queen, to give Kyle a mother figure, to strengthen political alliances." He paused. "I've refused every suggestion they've made, because there's only one person I want standing beside me, only one person I trust with my son, my empire, and my heart." Elena's breath caught. "Ronan?" "I'm not proposing," he said quickly. "Not yet. I know you need time. Know that making our relationship official would add even more pressure, more scrutiny, more danger. But I wanted you to know, when you're ready, if you're ever ready, the position is yours. Not because I need a queen, but because I need you." Tears streamed down Elena's face. "You can't mean that. I'm human. Remnant. The council would never accept—" "The council has accepted remnants in the military, in government, in positions of influence throughout the empire," Ronan interrupted gently. "They can accept one in the highest position of all, especially when that one has already proven her worth 1,000 times over." He squeezed her hand. "Think about it. No rush, no pressure. Just think about it." Elena nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. They stood there together, watching the sun set over the empire they were slowly, painfully, beautifully changing. And Elena felt something settle in her chest, a certainty she'd been afraid to acknowledge until now. This was home. These people, Kyle, Ronan, Thera, Varn, even the council members who still eyed her with suspicion, they were her family now. Her pack. Her place in a world that had tried so hard to make her feel like she didn't belong anywhere. "I don't need time," Elena said quietly. Ronan looked at her sharply. "What?" "I said I don't need time." Elena turned to face him fully, her voice growing stronger. "A year ago, you asked me to save your son, to risk everything for a child I barely knew. And I did, because it felt like the right thing, because some part of me recognized that he was worth saving, that you were worth trusting, that this brutal world might be worth changing." "Elena, I'm not finished," she said, smiling through her tears. "I've spent this year building something I never imagined I could build. Proving that the world could be different, that humans and shapeshifters could coexist as equals. That strength comes in more forms than claws and fangs. And through all of it, you've been beside me, supporting me, protecting me, believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." She took his other hand, holding both of them tightly. "So yes, Ronan Drax, when you're ready to make it official, when the time is right, I'll stand beside you. I'll be your queen, Kael's mother, the Empire's bridge to a better future. Because you've given me everything I never knew I needed. Home, purpose, family, love." Ronan stared at her, his expression cycling through shock and joy and something that looked like relief so profound it was almost painful. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "You're sure?" he whispered against her hair. "Because once this is announced, there's no going back. You'll be painted as target by everyone who opposes change. You'll face challenges I can't always protect you from. I'll face them," Elena interrupted. "The way I faced everything else, with courage, compassion, and the knowledge that I'm not alone." "What?" She pulled back enough to look at him. "I'm sure, Ronan, more sure than I've been about anything in my life." He kissed her then, not the tentative kiss of a year ago, but something deeper, fiercer, full of promise and hope, and the absolute certainty that they were building something that would last. When they finally pulled apart, Kael was standing a respectful distance away, trying not to grin and failing spectacularly. "So," the boy said innocently, "does this mean Elena's officially going to be my mother now? Because I've been practicing calling her mom, and I think I've got it down." "Kael!" Elena laughed, embarrassed and delighted in equal measure. "What? I'm just asking." Kael's eyes were dancing with mischief and joy. "I want to make sure I get the protocol right. When do I start calling Father Dad again instead of Your Majesty? Is there a ceremony? Do we need to practice?" Ronan swept both of them into a fierce embrace, one arm around Elena, the other around his son. "You," he told Kael, "are a menace." "I learned from the best," Kael replied, grinning at Elena. They stood there, three people who'd found each other in the darkness and built something bright, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to appear. The Empire still had challenges ahead. There would be resistance, setbacks, moments where the old brutality tried to reassert itself. But looking at the integrated units celebrating their graduation, at the remnants who no longer lived in fear, at the children who were growing up in a world that was learning to value difference instead of destroying it, Elena knew they'd succeed because the story had changed. No longer was it about predators and prey, dominance and submission, the strong crushing the weak. Now it was about bridges being built, about different strengths combining to create something greater than the sum of their parts, about a human girl who'd refused to be invisible, a monster child who'd learned to control his beast, and a ruthless king who'd discovered that the strongest thing he could do was choose compassion over cruelty. Together, they would reshape the Empire. Together, they would prove that a new order was possible. Together, they would build a future where no one had to hide what they were, where every gift was valued, where strength and kindness could exist side by side. It wouldn't be easy, but nothing worth doing ever was. Elena looked up at the stars, thinking about her mother's last words. "Run and don't look back, and make it mean something." "I did it, Mom," she whispered. "I made it mean something." Beside her, Ronan squeezed her hand. Kael leaned against her shoulder, solid and warm and safe. And Elena, the girl who'd survived when she shouldn't have, who'd changed an empire by refusing to let cruelty define her, who'd proven that the quietest voice could spark the loudest revolution. Elena smiled. Because the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And this time she wasn't writing it alone. This time she had a family. This time she had home. This time she had hope. And hope, as she'd learned, was the most powerful force in any world. The kind that toppled empires and built new ones. The kind that turned monsters into protectors and prey into queens. The kind that changed everything.